Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. I don't know if you guys have heard of it before, but in 1977, the guy who made American Graffiti wrote and directed an obscure science fiction movie called Star Wars. Star Wars was considered a big gamble at the time it was made, with plenty of behind-the-scenes tumult and production delays, and plenty of people not getting it until it was actually completed and it became so damn popular. But back during its struggling days, Lucasfilm was looking for anything reasonable to promote the film, and one of those ways was a comic adaptation. They approached Marvel in 1975 when Stan Lee was in charge of the company, who basically told them that he wouldn't do it until they had at least finished the dang movie, which of course they wouldn't for another 2 years. Fortunately though, it seems that George Lucas enjoyed writer Roy Thomas's work on Conan the Barbarian, and they convinced him to take up the job of writing the adaptation. Thomas arranged another meeting with Stan Lee in 1976, who was finally convinced to go ahead with the project, particularly after their initial agreement was that Lucasfilm would not receive royalties on the book, which is kind of baffling because Star Wars, in case you hadn't noticed, kind of liked to put out toys and merchandise even before the Disney purchase. Until it received 100,000 sales. And surprise, surprise, the adaptation of the most popular movie ever did really well, leading to an ongoing Star Wars series at Marvel that lasted until 1986. Although interestingly, the first issue of the adaptation was released a few weeks before the movie came out, so people had a preview of what was to come in the film, which might actually be a better justification in my mind of doing comic adaptations of movies nowadays, if the first part of it comes out before the film itself, kind of a teaser of what to expect and to hype up the movie. Star Wars would leave Marvel in 1986 since, well, the movies were over, and I have to imagine that interest in the ongoing waned without any new big Star Wars projects out there. Blackthorn Publishing picked up the license for those 3D comics, of which I've reviewed 2 before, but in 1991, the Star Wars license was picked up by Dark Horse, who did a massive amount of Star Wars comics until 2014, when the license swung back around to Marvel, since Disney owned both anyway.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
But let's go back to Dark Horse for a second. Hey, you know how the original trilogy is getting its own special edition that adds a bunch of stuff that's not necessary, but might make the movie prettier and also spawn a million memes about the timing of Han Solo shooting someone? What if we did that with the comics? In 1997, Dark Horse released a remastered version of Star Wars A New Hope, but this one was indeed based on the Special Editions version, so yes, random CGI lizards, really depressing looking CGI Jabba the Hutt, and indeed, Greedo shooting before Han. Unlike the original Marvel adaptation, this one was only 4 issues. That is not the one we're looking at. Sure, it might be fun to do that down the road as another review since it'll be very different from the Marvel one, but one of the reasons why I want to do the original adaptations of the movies, especially A New Hope, is that it's a lot clunkier. It was the first time anything related to Star Wars was released to the public, with the exception of the novelization, and the creators were doing a lot of their work based off of a screening of an early edit of the film, and obviously a comic written and drawn in the 70s is going to have its own liberties and style of writing than something made 20 years after the original movie, with ready access to home media to base the shots off of. But also like the movie re-releases that keep updating CGI, there was another remaster of A New Hope's comics, this time taking the original Marvel comics and keeping the pencils, but re-inking and recoloring them to match the film a lot better. In most places, it's fine. The shading and lighting do clash a bit with an art style that was not intended for it, but there are what I can probably call effects shots that are just way overdone in the redone coloring. Just this brighter lens flare sheen on everything that looks much more at odds with this book than it should. And as such, I think it'll be more interesting to talk about this adaptation with the original coloring. Or at least the coloring done for a high-quality reprint of the issues. So let's dig into Star Wars number 1 to 6, aka the comic adaptation of Star Wars A New Hope.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he is a man, punch, sporadically a grouch. Linkara, he has his own spaceship, but he's always on his couch. Linkara, ghosts, gods, a universe in flux.
Because we're doing 6 issues, we have to mostly skip the covers, but I will touch on them briefly because they're so funny nowadays after 40 plus years of Star Wars. These scans come from a different re-release of the original run, with the colors restored. You can tell thanks to the big Legends logo along the bottom, which is basically Disney's way of saying this is now non-canon. Although that's hilarious that it's being applied to the adaptation of the first movie. To me, that means the McClunky cut is the official canon version, and everything without it apocryphal. A prank that the stormtroopers like to pull sometimes whenever Vader's in his healing tank is to paint his helmet green. He's actually a pretty good sport about it and says it's his way of supporting eco-friendly superweapons. Enter Luke Skywalker! Will he save the galaxy or destroy it? It could be either depending on who you ask about The Last Jedi. We open not exactly with the iconic shot of the underbelly of the Star Destroyer chasing the Rebel ship, but rather a shot from above where a much more stout-looking Star Destroyer is blasting it. This also used an earlier version of the crawl, now in narration captions. It is a period of civil war in the galaxy. A brave alliance of underground freedom fighters has challenged the tyranny and oppression of the awesome galactic empire. Since they're operating underground, though, they're finding it really hard to fight spaceships. To crush the rebellion once and for all, the Empire is constructing a sinister new battle station. Powerful enough to destroy an entire planet, its completion will spell certain doom for the champions of freedom, but also spells a lot of tax benefits for the contractors. Striking from a fortress hidden among the billion stars of the galaxy, Rebel spaceships have won their first victory in a battle with the powerful Imperial Starfleet. Don't be too impressed. It was just them deciding where to go to lunch afterwards. The Empire fears that another defeat could bring 1,000 more solar systems into the rebellion, and Imperial control over the galaxy would be lost forever. Okay, so here's the plan. All the main systems defect to the Rebels too, and then since we're all there anyway, we just become the new Empire. For some reason, the rest of the creative team are all up top on the page, but Marie Severin, the colorist, got shoved into a text box below. Weird. Anyway, on board the blockade runner, we're already in the middle of the firefight between the stormtroopers and rebels. No explosion in the cramped corridor or anything. R2 and 3PO are trying to avoid the chaos. This is all your fault! I should have known better than to trust the logic of a half-sized thermos-capsulary dehousing assister. Dehousing assister? R2-D2 helped take away people's homes? We cut over to a scene that was removed from the final film, where Luke is spotting the battle from the surface of Tatooine. Luke Skywalker lowers his macro binoculars, standing transfixed for a moment. Whoa, man. I think the blue milk's starting to kick in. While Luke heads off to the nearby town of Anchorhead, we cut back to the ship to see a very blue Darth Vader strangling a Christmas elf. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a rebel who apparently had his normal uniform painted red and green for some reason. The rebellion is very festive. Around this time, they say, "May the claws be with you." Where is the data you intercepted? We're on a diplomatic mission! Liar!
I was freaking there when I killed half you guys in a hallway as you passed it off. Hell, I don't even have to be holding you up by my arm if I wanted to. I have got space magic that would let me do it.
Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, tightens his fingers on the rebel officer's throat, but he still receives no answer. I wonder why he'd be receiving no answer while choking the dude. Interesting to see the word Sith pop up here, but nowhere in the actual movie. Anyway, he kills the rebel. The fool is dead. Start tearing the ship apart piece by piece until you have those tapes. Vader will go to extreme lengths to recover his Duran Duran tapes. 3PO finds R2 getting the plans uploaded to him by Princess Leia. The unknown girl who kneels by the smaller robot is probably beautiful by human standards.
You're a beautiful woman, probably.
But 3PO, being a robot himself, takes scant notice of her. Even if 3PO did give a crap about beautiful women, why would he care about that when they just got boarded by the space Nazis? After Leia runs off, 3PO asks R2 what they're gonna do, and R2 starts loading them into an escape pod. Despite 3PO's whiny objections, the two quickly get launched out of the ship. Stormtroopers soon find Leia. There's one of them. Set weapons for stun. I've set mine to kill! Man, screw the Senate! Killing things is much cooler! Before she can flee, she's hit with the stun ray, which in this panel looks more like a I'm blowing a hole in your chest setting, but hey, that would stun someone, I guess. Back on Tatooine, more of the deleted stuff with Luke as he arrives in Anchorhead to meet with his friends about what he saw. However, instead of talking to them, Luke is surprised to see his friend Biggs has returned. Hey, what happened? Didn't you get your commission? Why, of course I got it. Signed aboard the Rand Ecliptic last week. First Mate Biggs Darklighter at your service. Okay, what actually tells me that you're lying is that you said your name was Biggs Darklighter. Luke tells them about the battle, but by now it's over and they can't spot anything, so they think Luke was just exaggerating. I keep telling you, Wormy, the rebellion's a long way from here. I doubt if the Empire would even fight to keep this system. Yeah, I don't see this franchise ever coming back to this dump of a planet. Leia is dragged over to Vader. Lord Vader, I should have known. Only you could be so bold. Well, the Imperial Senate will not sit still for this. When they hear you've attacked a diplomatic...
Don't play games with me, Your Highness. I literally saw this ship 10 minutes ago over Scarif. Geez, you'd think I'd forget that?
Well, in the interest of fairness, Vader does say that this ship passed through a restricted system. Several transmissions were beamed to the ship by spies, who are now unfortunately dead.
But we'll still milk a Disney Plus series or two out of them.
He orders Leia away, and one of the Imperial officers says that she should be killed. Vader rejects this because they still need to find the rebel base, and she's their only link. Still, there could be political fallout from this, so he orders a fake distress signal sent talking about a meteorite storm, and that the ship will then be vaporized.
I've been informed that a repair pod was somehow jettisoned during the fighting. I think the officers need to get their eyes checked because there's a difference between an escape pod and a repair pod.
He figures the data is on board, and they need to go down and retrieve it. Send a detachment down to retrieve them without attracting attention.
I'd go down myself, but, sad. Plus, I don't want to run into my relatives. They get on my back for not calling them enough.
Back on Tatooine, below, in the place called Junland, or No Man's Land. We could just call it that, but some cartographers were feeling extra that day. R2 and 3PO have survived, and our golden friend is doing what he's best at, complaining. What a forsaken place this is. We seem to be made to suffer. And how bad have the last 20 years been for him, considering he doesn't even remember all the crap he went through in the prequels? As in the film, the two separate as 3PO doesn't want to go the same way, but in a bit of efficiency, probably for the sake of the adaptation, R2 is captured by the Jawas while 3PO is ranting. Back over to Luke and Biggs Light Darker. Biggs admits that he's planning on jumping ship once the frigate he's on goes to the Central Systems and try to join the rebels. Luke bemoans that he wants to join too, but he's stuck on Tatooine for another season. What good is all your uncle's work if he ends up merely a tenant soon, slaving away for the greater glory of the Empire? Yeah, I mean, the Empire is really taking advantage of all that moisture he farms. Biggs leaves, and Luke says he'll always be the best friend he has. Cutting the scenes with Biggs definitely makes sense for the breakneck pacing they wanted to have for the original Star Wars. Constant motion, next plot point, action and adventure, but it feels like we missed out a bit by cutting this. Not just because Biggs shows up for the final battle, and we've otherwise never seen him before in the film, thus the emotional impact of his death is lost, but because it gives us a better idea of how boring life on Tatooine really is, and why Luke would want to get away from it. It helps build his character and the audience's relationship with him when we see more of him early on like this. Otherwise, we get the impression that our main characters are the trash can we can't understand, and the annoying gold robot with bad articulation. Anyway, we cut over to a soulless Imperial conference room, somewhere in the galaxy. Well, if they had just put in the decorative fern like I recommended, it wouldn't be quite as soulless now, would it? This is the scene with the Imperial commanders discussing the risk of the Death Star plans and concern over the Senate catching word of its existence, shown much earlier than it was in the film. Admiral Motti is convinced the Death Star is invulnerable, while Commander Tag, who, by the way, I just assumed for years was a very young Colm Meaney of Star Trek fame, sounds just like him. But no, different actor altogether. Man, Star Trek is always on my brain, even when watching other franchises. Is worried that this attack on Leia and her ship will just build up support for the rebellion in the Senate. Grand Moff Tarkin enters with a very stout-headed Vader in tow. The Imperial Senate is no longer of any concern to us, gentlemen. The filibuster rules are intact. I have just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the Council. permanently. The last remnants of the old republic have been swept away. The regional governors now have direct control over their territories. Impossible! How will the Emperor maintain control without the bureaucracy? And what are we gonna do with the big room with all the floating, spinning disc platforms? Fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this battle station which nears completion. We're going to make a big TV special touring it with celebrity guest stars and encouraging tourism via the recreation deck. How does everyone feel about little Death Star-shaped malted milk balls as the signature snack? If the rebels have obtained a complete technical readout of this battle station, it is possible, however unlikely, that they might find a weakness and exploit it. Or worse, they'll start selling bootleg versions of it for suckers to buy, thinking they're the real thing. Admiral Motti thinks there's no chance regardless of whatever plans they found. This battle station is now the ultimate power in the universe. Don't become too proud of this technological terror you've created, Admiral Motti. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the cosmic force. Is it though? Just saying, I'm not seeing you guys building any planet-destroying superweapons by plugging a Jedi in as its battery. Don't try to frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. Your sad devotion to that ancient religion hasn't helped you conjure up those stolen data tapes.
Ancient? It was like 20 years ago. Hell, we were still hunting rogue Jedi like 10 years ago.
The nostalgia cycle has left you behind, Lord Vader. Just accept that you're not cool anymore. Vader does the Force choke on him. I find your lack of faith disturbing. I find it more disturbing that in these panels we see him levitate a coffee cup over to himself and still be holding it. Can he seriously drink through that thing? I'm just saying, that was a parody thing done in Spaceballs. Also, points for the comic version actually showing the Force being used for telekinesis long before it actually happened in Empire Strikes Back. Guess that was always a thing. Tarkin orders him to knock it off and reassures the commanders that Vader will find the plans by the time the station is fully operational. Back on Tatooine, 3PO got picked up by the Jawas and is reunited with R2. They're led outside to the Skywalker farm along with other droids. Luke, tell your Uncle Owen that if he gets a translator to be sure it speaks Bocce. Luke screws up and gets a droid that speaks lacrosse instead. Owen thinks that R2 looks like crap, but picks up 3PO because he speaks rugby and R5-D4. Luke, take them to the garage and clean them up. But I was going into Tashi Station to... After you finished your chores. Aw, he didn't let him finish the sentence about picking up power converters, which was code for buy space drugs. However, R5-D4, not named in this, but I actually had a toy of him as a kid, blows its top. Uncle Owen, this R2 unit has a bad motivator. Well, when the director's instructions are just walk 5 feet and explode, would you have good motivation for the scene? By the way, this is also an example of Star Wars refusing to just let mistakes be mistakes. Either Luke said something wrong, or admit, hey, the toys made up the name for this thing later, but don't worry about it. Like I said, he's an R5 unit, not R2, but Expanded Media had to explain, oh, there's a line of R2 units that are housed in R5 casing. Like, I'm a pedantic nitpicker, it's my entire shtick, but even I would not give a crap about this. Why was it necessary to explain stuff like that away? 3PO recommends R2 instead, and the Jawas give them the blue guy as compensation. Don't you forget this, R2. Why I stick my neck out for you is beyond my capacity to— Asshole, I got rocket jets in my legs! I was planning on leaving your golden ass behind, regardless of where we ended up! Luke whines to the droids as he repairs them that he's never going to get off this planet, but then notices something jammed into R2. He accidentally activates it, a hologram of Leia. In this version, the holograms are actually better quality than in the movies, with full color instead of being flickering blue ones. Seriously, if we ever do get a Star Wars and Star Trek crossover, someone's gonna show the Star Wars people a holodeck, and they're gonna freak the hell out about that tech. What's this? A 3-dimensional hologram? And she's beautiful. Wow, I sure hope I don't regret this boner later. But who is this girl? I think she was a passenger on our last voyage, sir, but I don't... Okay, even putting aside retcons involving Rogue One, 3PO is a protocol droid. Would he not know who was a sitting senator or who was on board their ship in order to, you know, follow protocol? The message is repeating, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi," and R2 is claiming that he's the property of Obi-Wan. 3PO has no idea what he's talking about, since his memory got wiped and all at the end of Revenge of the Sith. I don't know any Obi-Wan, but there's an old Ben Kenobi who lives out beyond the Dune Sea. Sort of a hermit. And his last name isn't something ridiculous like Sunshaker or whatever, so it must be him! He removes the restraining bolt that allows them to control R2 and keep him from leaving on his own, hoping to get more of the message, but R2 claims to have picked up a bug. Now the holograms disappeared, girl and all! The hologram was only of the girl. What's the and all part that vanished? Later at dinner, Luke mentions the recording and Obi-Wan, and in the comic, Owen is much more pissed about bringing up Obi-Wan, even though the dialogue is the same as the movie. It's a name for another time. That can only mean trouble. Things from the past are evil and troublesome. Strike them down, Luke! You stay away from that old wizard, do you hear me? He's dangerous. Jeez, what the hell happened in Obi-Wan Season 2 that got this reaction? He orders Luke to wipe their memories tomorrow and continues his streak of parenting by saying that Luke can't apply to the Academy, or Academy as it's misspelled, unless that's just how Star Wars spells it, because how dare we have a typo, since they need his help. Owen says that he can do so in another year, but apparently he's made that promise before. Luke walks off. Owen, we can't keep him here forever. Most of his friends are gone. I'll make it up to him next year, I promise. May I become a charred skeleton if I don't. Luke's just not a farmer, Owen. He's got too much of his father in him. That's what I'm afraid of. It really is shocking how the Vader and Anakin connection wasn't planned from the start, because it fits so well with all the dialogue in this movie. We don't get Luke watching the sun set, understandable cut, but sucks to lose it, as Luke discovers that R2 is taken off on his own to find Obi-Wan since his restraining bolt was removed. No sign of him, even with these electro-binoculars. Because, you know, we're in space. Man, Luke, you really should trade in those electro-binoculars for a bus ticket on Coruscant. Anyway, 3PO asks why they can't go after him. Not at night, it's too dangerous with all the sand people around. Damn Fremen! In the morning, the two head out while stormtroopers find the abandoned escape pod. The small piece of metal I found in the sand. Droids. Little known fact, droids poop metal. Luke and 3PO soon find R2, but he detects creatures approaching. Sand people, or worse, insurance salesmen. They're quickly attacked, with a lot of narration giving names to things like the Tusken Raiders' Gaddafi staff, ending issue 1, which interestingly is only 17 pages long, not counting advertisements. It's just weird how content changes over time since, yeah, comics being that short, now that I think about it, was pretty common back then, though frequently they'd have backup stories to fill in the rest. The cover for issue 2 was a pretty normal type of cover for this era, exaggerating an event in the issue a bit more. In this case, the Cantina fight now has like everyone trying to pile on Obi-Wan and Luke. More interestingly is this tagline, Luke Skywalker strikes back. Sure, it's not like Star Wars invented the phrase strikes back, but it is a weird coincidence to have an early Star Wars thing use that phrasing, isn't it? Also, check out this early Star Wars logo on the first page. We were robbed of a logo that had actual stars in it. Anyway, the Tusken Raiders are chased off by Obi-Wan making some echoing moaning noise. I'd rather not know what that means, but the point is, he's rescued Luke, and wow, Howard Chaykin must have been a fan of Alec Guinness, because he's the only one so far who actually properly looks like his actor. You see it even more in the remastered coloring. Claims to be the property of someone called Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a long while. That asshole owes me money. Much as I like the Obi-Wan series, it is kind of weird that he says he hasn't heard the name in a while when it really wasn't that long ago. I think my uncle knew him. He says he's dead. Oh, he's not dead. Not yet. Not yet. He's me. I haven't gone by the name Obi-Wan since before you were born. Insurance fraud's a hell of a thing, Luke. They find 3PO, who fell over during the scuffle and his arm came off. Where am I? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I must have taken a bad step. Quickly, replace my arm with a red one! Back at Obi-Wan's place, the order of events is different from the final movie. They activate Leia's hologram immediately before the other conversations. And yeah, that was a good change in the movie. Leia's message is the call to action that requires immediately saying yes or no, not screwing around talking about Luke's dad and the Force right afterwards. General Obi-Wan Kenobi, I present myself in the name of my father, Bail Antilles, Viceroy of Alderaan. Years ago, Commander, you served the Old Republic in the Clone Wars. And since everyone seems to like that show, we need you to come back and save us all again. Information vital to the survival of the Rebel Alliance has been placed in this droid. Please see this R2 unit delivered safely to Alderaan. You are our last hope. When you get right down to it, Obi-Wan basically retired to become a delivery boy. Whoever she is, she's terrific. She did a phenomenal job of standing there begging for help. You fought in the Clone Wars? Oh yes, I was once a Jedi Knight, just like your father. But way cooler. For instance, I actually could grow a beard. I do love the shot of Obi-Wan in shadows. Would have worked better when describing how Anakin died, but still nicely moody. Your Uncle Owen didn't agree with your father's ideals. Was really against child murder for some reason. Thought he should have stayed here on Tatooine and not gotten involved. In the 10 minutes that he met him, he really sussed out your father. Obi-Wan gives Luke his father's lightsaber. Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough. Okay, 1, old enough from what we saw in the prequels was like 4 years old. 2, how does he know that? Anakin kept the pregnancy secret until the end. 3, why would he want to give him his lightsaber? If he was going to be a Jedi, wouldn't he want to have Luke make his own? Not unexpectedly, the lightsaber is not blue, but pink.
Too much pink energy is dangerous.
Your father's lightsaber, the formal weapon of a Jedi Knight. The Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Just don't ask us to free any slaves. How did my father die, Ben?
You thunder against me?
I am what you made me.
He tripped and fell on his lightsaber. Important safety tip, Luke. They should put a warning label on these things. He was betrayed and murdered by a young Jedi named Darth Vader, a boy I was training, one of my brightest disciples, my greatest failure. Somewhere, Vader is looking up and grumbling, I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. Darth Vader used the power of the Force for evil to help the Empire hunt down and destroy the last of the Jedi Knights. Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force, and it consumed him. The Force? Why do you keep saying it with quotation marks, Ben? It makes it sound like you're being sarcastic. The Force is an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds, binds the galaxy together. Knowledge of the Force is what gives a Jedi Knight his power. There's also the midichlorians and the Whills, but we'll get into all that when you're ready for the advanced Jedi classes. Obi-Wan says Luke needs to come with him to Alderaan and learn the ways of the Force, but Luke refuses, saying he can't get involved with something so far away. That's your uncle talking. Remember, the Force is with all men, binding them together. The suffering of one is the suffering of all. That's a good line and life philosophy, but probably best that it got cut given everything that happens in the franchise. While Leia is interrogated not by a ball droid, but whatever the hell this thing is, our heroes spot a Jawa transport that's been recently destroyed. Luke thinks it was the Tusken Raiders. We never heard of them hitting something this big. They didn't, Luke, but we were meant to think so. Yeah, I mean, imagine someone thinking that the Empire was doing something evil otherwise. Look at those blast points. Only Imperial stormtroopers are this precise. Oh man, I can't believe I actually said that with a straight face. Luke realizes that these are the same Jawas who sold them R2 and 3PO. Thus, if they were able to track the two to the transport, they'd be able to track them to his farm. And indeed, he quickly rushes back to discover the farm in flames. Then he suddenly sees 2 smoldering piles which had once been human beings. Oh good! Owen and Beru were able to kill 2 stormtroopers! Back on the Death Star, the station is now fully operational, though Leia was able to resist their interrogation. As such, Tarkin has a new plan to get her to talk, having them set course for Alderaan. Luke reunites with the others. Ben, I want to go with you to Alderaan. There's nothing here for me now. That's not true! You still got Tashi Station and power converters! They head to Mos Eisley Spaceport. You won't find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. I can name like 5 places in Star Wars off the top of my head filled with worse people than in Mos Eisley. Get out of the house sometimes, old man. He uses the Jedi mind trick on the stormtroopers who want to see some identification, explaining to Luke how the Force can be used to influence the mind. A powerful ally, though you will discover it can also be a danger. The Force hits you with microtransactions faster than you would expect. They head into the cantina to start looking for a pilot to bring them to Alderaan, though of course that just leads to the confrontation at the bar with the aliens who have the death sentence in 12 systems! And of course, Obi-Wan pulls his lightsaber to deal with them. Ben's own lightsaber comes suddenly to life, and a wide-eyed Luke Skywalker is abruptly reminded that old Ben Kenobi was once Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Jedi Knight. He's been killing people in bars long before Luke was born. Only when the 2 aggressors lie in sections on the floor does the old man's body appear to relax, or the suggestion of a sigh escape him. Oh god, I need a death stick and to rethink my life. Ben has already met Chewbacca and introduces him to Luke. The art is interesting on him. Kind of makes it look like he has a mustache even though he's 98% fur. While R2 and 3PO hide from stormtroopers outside, our heroes meet Han Solo. I'm Han Solo, captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie tells me you're looking for passage to the Alderaan system. If it's a fast ship. Fast ship? You mean you've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
What the hell is an aluminum falcon?
This panel right here is another good recreation of the shot in the movie, which is interesting because a lot of the comic hasn't really followed the cinematography or individual scene composition of the movie so far. Anyway, when they say they want to avoid the Empire, he asks for 10,000 credits in advance. Obi-Wan says they don't have it on them, but if they'll take a 2,000 deposit, they can get him 15,000 at Alderaan. Let's just say their leader owes me a big one for rescuing their daughter, who is also currently captured. Come to think of it, bet I can get another 20,000 if I rescue her again. He agrees, Luke and Ben hurrying off when some stormtroopers enter the bar. I'm afraid you'll have to sell your speeder, Luke. It's alright, I don't think I'll ever come back to this planet anyway. Yeah, just imagine if somebody symbolically buried you here on this dung heap of a planet that you hated and never wanted to come back to. It would be pretty disrespectful and missing the point entirely, wouldn't it? In the bar, Greedo shows up to get the money Han owes Jabba. As for the age-old meme about Han shooting first, we've got this new contender for the fight. Han shoots early, as in this comic he shoots Greedo before the "I've been looking forward to this" bit. Han tosses a coin to the bartender. Sorry for the mess. Why do people keep coming to this bar when the murder rate is like 500% higher than everywhere else? Luke sells his speeder to pay for the down payment, but a figure in black follows them. At the docking bay, we have a scene that was restored in the special edition, but also something different for the comic, since apparently the creators didn't have access to the production material. Jabba the Hutt himself showing up at the hangar to talk to Han. And look, it's totally Jabba! Yellow skin, weird white sideburns, beard, beady eyes, orange tunic, 2 legs. The scene was pointless and a good cut because it just repeated information we already had in the Greedo scene. For the special edition, it was more just to have a bigger incentive to see the special edition by including deleted scenes, plus George Lucas getting to play with effects technology. Still, I enjoyed Han's last line in it, especially since it wasn't intended for Slug Jabba, calling him a wonderful human being. It's different in the comic. I'll pay you, Jabba, but not because you threaten me. I'll pay you because it's my pleasure. Ugh, does Han want to get into the gold bikini in this version? So what's the expanded universe explanation for this Jabba? A robot he's speaking through? Jabba was on some weird drugs at the time? Hallucination on Han's part? After an unnecessary detour to the Death Star to, again, remind us of information we already know, Luke and Obi-Wan arrive at the hangar. Unfortunately, the cloaked figure ratted them out, so stormtroopers start firing on them. Our heroes make a quick escape into orbit, but are attacked by 3 Star Destroyers that all apparently are putting out pink exhaust fumes. Pink smoke is when you know the situation is serious. Can't you outrun them? I thought you said this thing was fast! Luke Skywiner. Just then, the entire spacecraft shudders as a blinding explosion flashes just outside the viewports. And even a near miss almost overcomes the phototrophic shielding. And if this ship was a plant, those words would mean something. Han says it'll take them a few minutes to calculate the coordinates for jumping to light speed. Without the proper calculations, we could pass through a star, or bounce too near a supernova, or slam right into one of the Star Destroyers, which would be cool and all, but probably an impractical strategy given the cost of a ship, the size of a projectile necessary to actually do damage to it, the risk of being blown out of the sky before you can do it, and also because apparently we haven't invented autopilot in this universe. Issue 2 ends with our heroes jumping to light speed, which is a very neat effect for the comic, since obviously they had no idea how this would look in the movie, creating this rainbow of star patterns behind them. 3rd issue's cover, nothing to say here. We catch up right in the middle of Tarkin threatening to destroy Alderaan to Leia. She gives the name Dantooine as the location of the rebel base, and then destroys Alderaan anyway because he's a dick. You know, aren't the regional governors supposed to be in charge of their own systems now? Seems like they'd be pretty pissed about one of their planets blowing up. Unless they were already on Alderaan, I suppose. On board the Falcon, Obi-Wan feels something and lets out a groan. I felt a sudden great ebbing in the Force, Luke. Wait, no, it's just that salad I got at the cantina. What was in that dressing? The Force? You mean that thing you talked about? The energy that's given out by all living things? No, the T-Force, Luke. What do you think? Yes, it was like the cry of a billion beings, stopping all at once. Well, hey, a billion people stopped crying. That's good, right? Nearby, R2 and Chewbacca are playing space chess, with the former winning and the latter being mad about that. Han recommends that it's not wise to piss off a Wookiee, implying that Chewie could rip his arms off if he loses. I suggest a new strategy, R2. Let the Wookiee win. Maybe his nickname should be Cheater then. Obi-Wan trains Luke in the use of his lightsaber with a floating purple ball. When he can't evade its shots, Obi-Wan puts a helmet on him so he can't see. Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them. Remember, a true Jedi Knight such as your father and I can feel the Force flowing from him. You mean that it controls your actions? Yes, but it also obeys your commands. The Force is a switch. Thanks to Obi-Wan's advice, Luke is able to deflect the giant coronavirus, saying he could definitely feel the Force. Hocus-pocus religions and ancient weapons are no substitute for a good blaster at your side, kid. Ignore him, Luke. He doesn't believe in the Force. Blasters will do you no good against the powers of darkness. Here, let me tell you about the time I defeated General Grievous. Wait. They arrive in the Alderaan system, but immediately upon re-entering normal space, they're caught in the debris field of the planet. In this version, Han actually recognizes that Alderaan's been destroyed instead of denying the possibility. They spot a TIE fighter and want to destroy it before it can identify them, with some wonky word balloon placement in this panel, but see it heading for a small moon. That's no moon, Mr. Solo. It's a space station.
It's only a model.
It's actually 3PO who delivers the classic, "I've got a bad feeling about this," which is soon justified as they're caught in the Death Star's tractor beam and dragged in. On the Death Star, Tarkin learns that the rebel base at Dantooine is long since abandoned, so Leia indeed lied to them. Tarkin orders her execution, but Vader says that she can still be useful, especially now that they've captured the Falcon. On the hangar deck, a search of the ship found nothing, and the log has been altered to say that the crew abandoned ship after takeoff. And it does make me wonder if anyone actually believed that, because that implies that the Star Destroyers over Tatooine are so bad at their jobs that they let a ship get away and go into hyperspace without a crew. Keep checking. I sense something. A presence such as I haven't felt since... Hanging in mid-sentence, Darth Vader turns quickly and exits. Now again, I like the Obi-Wan series, but it feels like that line would have had more power if it had been 20 years since their last encounter instead of just 10. Inside the ship, our heroes stowed away in some smuggling compartments, though it looks much more obviously to be a hatch instead of some loose floor panels like in the movie. While they could fly out, the Death Star's tractor beam will just get them pulled right back in, so it needs to be disabled. Obi-Wan's sent off to go deal with that. To help, our heroes lure some stormtroopers inside and steal their uniforms. So I decided to see if there was an expanded universe story about what happened to the stormtroopers' bodies, or if they, woke up and wandered out later or something. And instead I discovered that one of said stormtroopers was having a secret love affair with Tarkin. The expanded universe is wild, people! Our heroes kill the personnel in a security office, and R2 accesses the Death Star computers. They find the location of the tractor beam power reactor and maps to get there for Obi-Wan, who wants the rest to stay there. After Obi-Wan heads out, R2 discovers that Leia is there. Luke wants to rescue her, but Han isn't so sure. But I've seen her, Solo. She's beautiful. So's life. She's rich. So's... Huh? Rich? Yes, and if we rescue her, the reward will be more wealth than you can imagine. I don't know, I can imagine quite a bit. Even out here, I know about swimming in money Scrooge McDuck style. Han agrees, and wow, I finally noticed that he has black hair in a lot of this comic. They put Chewie in some loose handcuffs and act as prisoner and escorts, bringing him to the detention area where they're holding Leia. Chewie then breaks loose, and our heroes shoot down the cameras and the security guards. While Luke goes to get Leia out, Han hears someone calling. I'm in security center. Everything under control, slight weapon malfunction. What happened? We're all fine, thank you. How about you? We're sending a squad up. Negative. Reactor leak. Give us a few minutes to... Who is this? What's operating? And he shoots the console. It's a boring conversation anyway. For you, maybe, but for the guy on the other side of the line, this was the most action he's had in months. Luke finds Leia's cell. You're even more beautiful than I... Oh my god, comic, I get it! You were written before Lucas decided the two were siblings! Please stop! Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? Aren't you a little judgmental on people's physical appearances for a member of a resistance movement fighting fascism? Informing her that they're with Obi-Wan, the group are soon pinned down in the corridor by stormtroopers, ending issue 3. Issue 4's cover is a very cool visual of a looming giant Darth Vader about to play with our tiny heroes.
I didn't see you playing with your dolls again. Good!
As well as Leia in little red slippers, but goofier than that, Obi-Wan in a green cloak. I'm in exile from the Empire. I'd better wear something inconspicuous. We continue where we left off, though our heroes are taking considerably less cover than in the movie. Luke tries to call 3PO for an exit route for them, but the two droids hear knocking at the security office's door. This is some rescue. When you came in, didn't you have a plan for getting back out? Well, you know what's really helping is whining about it. Is this just a Skywalker thing? Leia shoots a hole into a garbage chute, the four tumbling down into it. The walls are made of a metal that ricochets blaster fire, but what's worse is that someone must have bought a baby tentacle monster and then flushed it when it got too big for its tank, since there's a creature here that tries to eat Luke. It eventually lets him go, but only because somebody turned on the trash compactor. They try to brace the walls with some rather sizable piping or support beams that are in there. Who threw those away? But the compactors are strong enough to crush those. 3PO and R2 are able to bluff their way past the stormtroopers that come in and finally get in touch with Luke. They shut down the compactor, allowing our heroes to escape. Nearby, Obi-Wan reaches the equipment for the tractor beam and begins shutting it down. Now he, like the others, is a fugitive on board this sprawling battle station. And even as he makes certain adjustments in a computer terminal, and several lights change from red to blue, Obi-Wan's brilliant plan? Mess with colorblind people. Once our heroes are free from the trash compactor, Leia clashes with Han over who should be in charge. They reach an observation deck over the hangar and try to figure out a safe way to return to the ship. You know, kid, getting back to the Falcon's gonna be like flying through the 5 fire rings of Fornax. Guess they were saving the explanation for that one for Solo 2. Stormtroopers soon find them, and Han chases them back, reasoning that they're not used to people who actually fight back against them. In the movie, he yells like a madman until they reach the Stormtroopers' reinforcements, but here he just corners them, so they're forced to turn around and fight. Luke and Leia, equally chased, come across a door to a bottomless pit, because, as I think we're pretty clear about across this entire franchise, safety railings are for suckers. I mean, why bother anyway? Every person we see fall into a bottomless pit in this franchise inexplicably survives, even if they're blown up or cut in half first. Luke swings across it with a grappling hook that of course he has, what with being a farmer on a desert planet. Oh, wait, my mistake. He got it from the stormtrooper belt he still had on. Why does a stormtrooper who works on a space station need a grappling hook as part of their everyday equipment? Oh my god, is the grappling hook the actual legit way to get around the station with all the bottomless pits? In the movie, Leia gives Luke a peck on the cheek for good luck. In the comic, it's full on the mouth because this comic really did not want these two to end up being related. They get across and shoot back at the stormtroopers following, continuing their escape. Obi-Wan starts returning to the Falcon, but finds Darth Vader waiting for him just outside of the hangar. I have been waiting, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but a learner. Now I am the master. Are you seriously still angry about not getting that promotion to master? That job doesn't even exist anymore, man. You still have much to learn.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you don't have the high ground now, do you?
Both activate their pink or sometimes purple lightsabers. Your powers are weak, old man. You should never have come back.
No cheating with a bunch of rocks this time, asshole.
You only know half the Force, Vader. You perceive its full power as little as a spoon perceives the taste of food.
Well, thanks to you, I can't use spoons or food, so go to hell, Obi-Wan.
The rest of our heroes regroup and move for the Falcon, but the fight between Vader and Obi-Wan starts moving towards it as well, getting the attention of both the good and bad guys. This is a fight you cannot win, Darth. For I have grown much since our parting. For instance, I've come to realize how stupid a statement only a Sith deals in absolutes really is. If my blade finds its mark, you will cease to exist. But if you cut me down, I will only become more powerful. I'll grow back like a worm, and then there'll be 2 of me. It's an old Jedi technique. Heed my words. Not this time. I am the master now. I, Darth Vader! And yeah, unlike the movie, Vader actually does properly hit him and he like zaps. Yeah, check out that expression. I think there might be a bit of pain before the whole more powerful than you can imagine bit. There is no death, there is only the Force. No, this looks like death. Still, he does just disappear, much to Vader's puzzlement. Of course, Luke seeing this makes him start shooting at Vader, the stormtroopers firing back at him, and they make their escape to end the issue. Cover for issue 5 is fine, another exaggeration of events, this time of the Death Star attacking Yavin, but with normal lasers instead of the planet-destroying one. Also, Luke Skywalker strikes again! Wait, does the cover think that Luke Skywalker is in charge of the Death Star? Han and Luke head into the Falcon's laser turret stations to fight off the pursuing TIE fighters. The addition here is a bunch of thought clouds showing Luke's, Han's, and Leia's reactions both to Obi-Wan's death and the situation they're in. It's not necessary, of course, as we saw in the final film, but it allows for some character expansion over the events that just transpired. Hell, we even get Luke saying that he needs to get the hang of using the Force to help him in this fight. Narration boxes add to some of the drama of the fight. Normally I'm against this since I prefer the artwork to speak for itself, but hey, you've got limited time to show off the events of the film, and it adds a bit of flavor to this, especially, as I said, Luke actually letting the Force guide him to destroy a fighter. Though one could argue that the inclusion of that diminishes the climax of the film, since we already know Luke can use the Force like that in space combat. After the celebrations of their victory over the fighters, we learn both from Leia's speculation and a cutaway to Tarkin and Vader that they let the Falcon escape, equipped with a homing beacon to track them to the Rebel base.
This will be a day long remembered. It has seen the end of the last of the Jedi Knights, and soon, very soon, it will see the end of the rebellion itself. I've got a good feeling about today, Tarkin. Drinks on me when this is all over.
Oh, well, here's how you know this is a bad adaptation. We see Tarkin wearing boots instead of slippers like Peter Cushing had on. Back on the Falcon...
What do you mean our escape was too easy?
They let us escape, don't you see? They know we will take R2-D2 straight to the Rebel base, and they undoubtedly mean to trail us there. Okay, one, dick move from the Empire then for letting so many of their troops and then the fighters die to let you guys escape. 2, shouldn't you not go to the base then and start searching the ship for a homing beacon? Maybe arrive at a big open port supposedly to refuel, drop off the Princess and R2, and then jump away again to try to get them off the trail? Han makes it clear he doesn't care about the rebellion, he just wants the cash reward for all this. Leia accepts that, though she's clearly pissed at his attitude. Luke goes to talk with Han. I don't know, Luke, do you think it's possible for a princess and a guy like me? No. And geez, just look at how pissed Luke is in this version. It's Leia and I that are clearly getting together, Han. There is nothing that could possibly prevent that from happening. The Falcon arrives at Yavin 4 and joins up with the Rebellion, who quickly analyze the data from R2 and come up with a plan. The Death Star is designed to fight off a large-scale assault, big guns for capital ships kind of things, so smaller vessels like fighters are able to get in closer to it, though normally fighters can't do any damage.
An analysis of the plans provided by Princess Leia.
Wait, do you mean Leia? She's like a bigwig in the Rebellion and was a senator. How could you get her name wrong, dude?
There is a small unshielded thermal exhaust port that runs directly into the reactor system. A direct hit on it should set up a chain reaction that will destroy the station. Let us bow our heads in remembrance of Galen Erso and the Rogue One team for making all this possible.
What about Kyle Katarn?
Who?
However, the exhaust port is only 2 meters across, and they're approaching it from a weird angle at top speed, so actually shooting it to go in and all the way down into the reactor is kind of hard.
And remember, only a direct hit is a hope of destroying the Death Star, before it destroys this moon and the hope of the rebellion.
Now you all go on the dangerous mission while the rest of us all sit around not evacuating everything in case things go wrong.
Now man your ships, and may the Force be with you.
Excuse me, it's the Force in quotation marks? As Luke prepares to join the other fighter pilots, he spots Han and Chewie loading up their reward money. Han invites Luke to come with them, and Luke likewise to them, but Han thinks the plan is insane and won't work. Well, take care of yourself, Han, but I guess that's what you're best at, isn't it? Actually, the franchise kind of shows time and again that Han really sucks at that and just continually gets himself in more trouble.
Luke Skywalker hardly hears Han Solo's whispered farewell. May the Force be with you.
Once again, movie does it better by having him hear it and said directly to his face. Not sure why the initial idea was to have it whispered anyway. Luke expresses his disappointment about Han leaving to Leia, and once again a platonic peck on the cheek becomes full-on makeout in this comic. No wonder they needed to do another version of this for the special edition. At this rate, the comic's gonna end with the two of them in bed together. Biggs is here too. Luke, I don't believe it. How do you get mixed up in this? Better question is, how did you get mixed up in this, Biggs? It's been like 2 or 3 days. Luke had the Death Star plans and Leia. How did you manage to join the Rebellion and their secret base that fast? They also meet a fighter group leader, Biggs vouching for Luke despite him never having flown in an X-Wing before.
Outer Rim? Skywalker?
Of course! I met your father once, when I was just a boy.
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?
Anyway, R2 is loaded up into Luke's X-Wing to provide navigation and other useful features, and the fighters are launched to end issue 5.
Blue boys, this is Blue Leader. I'm Blue, dabba dee dabba die, over.
The final cover
is a complete lie. It shows Luke and Vader fighting each other with their lightsabers, Leia recoiling in horror nearby, a Y-Wing fighting some TIE fighters. None of this happens in the comic. Like, the closest you get is that there are Y-Wings in the Battle of Yavin in the movie, but we don't see any of them in the comic. It's just X-Wings. We see, like, a cockpit of a Y-Wing. That's it. See Luke Skywalker battle Darth Vader. Like, that doesn't even happen. Sure, Vader fires a few shots at Luke, but it's not even really a battle between them in an abstract sense. Although, come to think of it, that is kind of weird, isn't it? That Luke never fights Vader in A New Hope. Bear in mind, Lucas was not thinking sequels when he wrote this film. As far as anyone knew, Star Wars would be a done-in-one. And we've seen my coverage of the adaptation of the earlier draft where Luke is an unrelated character and Anakin's dad did not die at Vader's hands. Vader killed Luke's father and brought down the Jedi. Shouldn't he be the final villain Luke takes on in A New Hope? But no, Vader not only never fights or even meets Luke, but he's just sent off into the ether until Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, it makes sense as the first part of a trilogy, but again, this wasn't supposed to be a trilogy at first. Anyway, the attack commences, the Death Star even being upside down here. 30 minutes! That's how long the main rebel base has before the Death Star, gigantic battle station of the Galactic Empire, will be in a position to destroy it. Or their pizza's free. But the base will be gone, so they can't do delivery. Not much to cover here, honestly. This is the entire final act of the movie where we make the desperate attack and trench run. As the battle continues and the fighters are able to evade the Death Star's defense systems, Vader orders fighters launched and decides to go out there too. And of course, the true hero of Star Wars gets taken down, even called by name, Porkins. Porkins, do you read? Eject! Eject! I'm okay. I can hold her. Just... Those are the last words ever uttered by the man Luke Skywalker knows only as Blue Six. Where is my Disney Plus Porkins series, damn it? But Biggs has fought beside Lieutenant Tono Porkins for long weeks and months, and he knows suddenly what it means to lose a friend. So long, Piggy. You will be avenged. Damn right! I'm sure Biggs has a long future ahead of him where he gets vengeance for Porkins. Dumb question, perhaps, but why were those panels included anyway? Blue Leader makes his shot at the exhaust port, but he misses. Vader, in turn, blows him away. The tragic irony that he was blown away by that pilot he met as a boy. With all the other attempts failing, Luke, Biggs, and another pilot, Wedge, need to go down and make their own attempt. Luke hears Obi-Wan speak to him briefly. It is a young old voice which sounds in his ears. The hell does young old mean? Ben Kenobi. Then... maybe he wasn't killed by Darth Vader's lightsaber after all. Maybe he merged somehow with the Force, and he's here with me in spirit. Right now! Or, looking at my screen, it seems I am leaking oxygen right now. R2, can you fix that before I start hearing Uncle Owen's voice too? Just wow with that thought cloud. Like, no ambiguity or mysticism. Oh hey, Obi-Wan must have merged with the Force. Obvious in hindsight. Anyway, the three make their run down the trench, Vader and his fighters in hot pursuit. And unfortunately, Porkins' revenge will not be today, as Vader destroys Biggs.
Now this is pod racing.
Wedge's ship gets damaged and he has to pull away, leaving Luke alone with Vader about to fire, but then a shot comes from above.
By the immortal gods of the Sith!
Ah yes, Vader's classic catchphrase. The Millennium Falcon comes in out of nowhere. The Falcon's intervention causes Vader's wingman to veer off suddenly, striking his lord's ship as he goes.
Damn it, we need to exchange insurance information.
Vader goes careening off into space as Han calls out to Luke. You're all clear, kid. Now blow this thing so we can all go home. This review is like an hour and a half long and we need to wrap it up already. Obi-Wan does not actually tell Luke to use the Force here, just trust me, which is not a sentiment shared by the rebels on Yavin, who start screaming that he's insane to turn off the targeting computer. He fires, and indeed, the torpedoes head into the exhaust port, Luke and the remaining ships hauling ass out of there. The Death Star explodes, and god damn, that is a friggin' beautiful explosion. Kudos, comic. Even the narration is pretty damn good. The collapsed residue of the Death Star will continue to consume itself for several days, forming, for that brief span of time, the most impressive tombstone in this corner of the cosmos. And, of course, engraved on it, This one's for Porkins. No voice of Obi-Wan saying the Force will be with him always, just our heroes returning to base and celebrating. In the final page and epilogue, our heroes march down the aisle. Luke and Han receiving medals. Dumb question, but where did they get these medals? Why do they have them? What good are they really? Why are they even still on Yavin doing this? Sure, the Death Star was destroyed, but I've got to imagine the Empire would start sending conventional weapons right at them to investigate what happened, and they should really start evacuating. And so our comic ends with the narration promising a lot for the future of these characters. Next issue, a new adventure of the Star Warriors. Wait, Star Warriors? Weren't those the guys who made Superman fight Muhammad Ali? Anyway, this comic is really not as good as the movie, obviously, but damn if it ain't a noble effort. Stuff like weird coloring is easy enough to get past. What hurts the story are those moments that have become iconic in the film. Lines and the way things were portrayed that have stuck with pop culture all this time being missed or altered. Obi-Wan joining the Force. Use the Force, Luke. The timing of certain events, etc. But none of this is bad. As an adaptation, especially one that was made before the film came out and didn't have all those elements established that made the film a hit and this universe so expansive and filled with exciting new developments and stories, it does a phenomenal job carrying over so much of the movie. It definitely has the quick pacing and action down, with the narration doing a good job of providing dramatic prose to advance and enhance the scenes. It admittedly can feel a bit bloated in the text as a result, but some of that is just the writing conventions of the time. Nothing was really left out when they probably could have made enough cuts to condense this into 5 issues, and hell, it doesn't even have as many pages as comic adaptations nowadays do, what with each issue only being around 17 pages, while a comic these days is around 20 to 22 per issue. It's easy to see why this adaptation was so popular, especially as this was a cheaper way to re-experience the movie than going to the theater over and over, the home video market not really being much of a thing yet for movies, and led into the successful original Marvel Star Wars comics. The movie may be better, but this was a damn good adaptation, and it's understandable why it would get some re-releases over the years. Next time, we hopefully have a shorter video as we get a Patreon-sponsored review of a Marvel Man comic. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Last year, we looked at the first ever comic outing of Star Wars. And technically the first outing of Star Wars altogether, with the comic adaptation of A New Hope. As commented before, Star Wars became an ongoing after that, much the same way Star Trek comics tended to follow on from a movie adaptation back in the day. And thus when it came time to do an adaptation of The Empire Strikes Back, they just folded it into the regular book. Thus issues 39 to 44 were devoted to the adaptation. Like with A New Hope, a re-release of the comic completely altered its coloring and shading to better match the look of the movie, and arguably it looks ugly because this is artwork that was not intended for digital coloring techniques. However, I do feel that Empire fared a lot better in the recoloring than A New Hope did, probably owing itself to experience and just the color palette being darker with better contrasting sections. Space scenes are still really overdone, but the scenes featuring people, not so much. For the 3 of you watching this who have never seen Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back is considered almost universally to be the best Star Wars movie of all, which is kind of hilarious considering when it came out, people hated it. The Empire Strikes Back is slower than A New Hope, a bit more contemplative, more philosophical, and not only is the plot overall darker, with our heroes constantly on the run or in the clutches of the villains, but it's also just a grimier movie, full of swamps and caves and industrial sections. It's more lived in and thus dirtier. It is not a happy movie, but it does codify a lot of stuff about the universe, about the Jedi, and of course the twist nobody saw coming at the time of release that simultaneously helped ensure the legacy of this franchise, as well as dooming it because suddenly being related to somebody became an important aspect of the universe. And no, Rise of Skywalker, I will not forgive you for that bullcrap! But enough about that. We're here to talk about Episode 5, aka the second one. Let's dig into the comic adaptation of The Empire Strikes Back. Have you ever noticed the title? It's not actually Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, it's just The Empire Strikes Back. I know George Lucas's reasoning was that putting a 2 at the end, like Star Wars 2, would have made people disappointed, since sequels were usually considered inferior to the original back then, but still, weird, isn't it? We've got 6 issues to look at, and the covers aren't really much to talk about save for one, so we'll skip them for the most part. I know that may be shocking to hear, since this Marvel comic could be worth $2,500 for me. I checked eBay. You might want to scratch off a couple of zeros from that, and you'll be closer. We open with a splash page that's pretty much just a cover in itself, though I love how even though the opening crawl is on the next page, because of the way comics were presented in 1980, there's still a blurb at the top giving a quick synopsis of the premise of Star Wars. Long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there exists a state of cosmic civil war. And yet the Space Super Bowl goes on. A brave alliance of underground freedom fighters has challenged the tyranny and oppression of the awesome galactic empire. This is their story. Unfortunately, their story is being deleted without ever being released for the sake of a tax write-off. We truly open with the "Gah! My eyes!" Who knew you could get snowblind from a comic book? Who decided you should have white text on blue? Yeah, the redone coloring fixes this, so we'll use that instead for this bit. God, this is the opening crawl text! I know this wouldn't be as bad when it was originally released since the newsprint would darken it, but still! Anyway, the opening crawl is different from the final one used in the movie, and it was definitely good to change it, namely because, like the original crawl from A New Hope, a lot of the information isn't really that relevant. After the destruction of its most feared battle station, the Empire has declared martial law throughout the galaxy. The New York Times opinion page declares it a logical, fair-minded move against the terrorists that destroyed a job creator. 1,000 worlds have felt the oppressive hand of the Emperor as he attempts to crush the growing rebellion. The Emperor says it's just a cosmic stress ball. As the imperial grip of tyranny tightens, Princess Leia and the small band of freedom fighters search for a more secure base of operations. Luke, meanwhile, tries to figure out where the hell he parked. And indeed, we're opening on the ice world Hoth, where Luke is scouting around on his very purple Tauntaun. Something that looks like a meteorite crashes nearby, and he calls it in, saying he's gonna go check it out. The Tauntaun suddenly gets very nervous, and Luke soon finds out why as a space yeti attacks him and knocks him unconscious. This sequence was written to explain real-life injuries Mark Hamill had gotten before filming. And consequently, we're heavily covered up with makeup in the Star Wars holiday special.
Come on, Mala, let's see a little smile. There, that's better.
At the meteorite crash site, we discover it was actually an Imperial probe droid that rises up and begins searching around. You know, it is kind of weird that with how big a planet is, that the droid managed to land like 10 minutes away from the Rebel base. If this is the will of the Force or something, the Force is an asshole. The Rebels have constructed a stronghold underground as Han Solo returns and checks in with Chewbacca, who's doing repairs on the Millennium Falcon. Hey Chewie! How's it coming with the Falcon's lifters? Sooner they're fixed, the sooner we're out of here. Alright, I'll go report and give you a hand. Take a look at that face on Chewbacca. That is the face that says, "Oh God, just bring me some coffee and let me work in peace. Don't try to help." Unlike the movie, the next dialogue exchange happens in the hangar bay as opposed to the control center, with Han informing a guy that he needs to be leaving soon. If I don't pay off Jabba the Hutt, I'm a walking dead man. And I got out of that series after season 3. Also, Hutt spelled with only one T. Neat. Apparently in between movies, a bounty hunter had gone after him, and that's what encouraged him to go leave now. Although why he couldn't pay off the debt and then come back again earlier eludes me. Or that he couldn't just do that now. I mean, obviously the long wait would piss off Jabba. I'm just saying in theory here. But yeah, he says his goodbye to Leia, but when she doesn't make a big deal out of it, he gets pissed. But you're a natural leader. We still need you. Han Solo, natural leader. No, your worship. That's not why you came after me. I think you were afraid I was leaving you without even a kiss. What? I'd just as soon kiss a Wookiee. I could see that too. She seemed super into Life Day during the holiday special. Well, either that or the cocaine. Believe me, you could use a good kiss. You've been so busy giving orders, you've forgotten how to be a woman. And you've been so busy being a douchebag, you've forgotten how to not be sexist. This was all condensed down in the actual movie, and probably for the best, not just because of the women should be kissing bullcrap, but because it's just kind of the same point repeated. Help the rebellion. No, you just want to bang me. Anyway, while that bit was cut out, another bit that was removed starts clawing its way through a wall of ice without them noticing it. Luke awakens hanging upside down from the ceiling of a cave. How did that thing do that? It looks like the snow and ice formed around his legs.
His lightsaber is on the ground under him and he tries reaching for it, but it's out of range. This is where the movies properly introduced that the Force also gives you telekinesis. In the comics, we knew that already because Darth Vader really likes coffee at the morning meetings. And in the movie, Luke just instinctively knows he can do that. Here, though, he hears a quiet voice instruct him. Luke, you must relax. Think the saber into your hand. Let the Force flow, Luke. Flow like the blood rushing to your head that's making you hallucinate my voice, Luke. There's a thought. Is there one of those goofy, it was all a dream theories that the rest of the franchise from this point on is just an hallucination in Luke's mind from the blood going to his head right before he's eaten? Since again, when this came out, the movies established only here that the Force can let you lift objects with your mind. Maybe his mind just made that up. I mean, imagine what could have happened if Luke had died on Hoth. Okay, so we don't have to. I'll probably cover that one at some point. Luke is freed, and the creature that grabbed him, called a Wampa, attacks. In the special edition, they added more scenes of the Wampa, originally just an arm or so, because the original costume proved difficult to work with and at times looked comically bad. And it seems the comic decided to follow that strategy, as we only see parts of it here like its arm. Still, Luke manages to slash at it with his lightsaber and escape out into the cold. Back at the Rebel base, 3PO and R2 find Han and tell him that Luke never returned and it's about to become night outside, where the temperature will drop even more. Han learns from the watch officer that something attacked a Tauntaun and their speeders aren't going to be ready until at least morning, so he decides to take one out for himself to try to rescue Luke. So, the temperature is falling rapidly. The nightly storms will start before any of you reach the first marker. And I'll see you in hell.
You and your stupid thoughtfulness can go to hell.
Luke, meanwhile, continues to wander through the snowstorm, but finally sees something in the distance. Obi-Wan Kenobi. This way. Look at me. You must survive. I need to borrow some money, Luke. Turns out you still pay rent when you're part of the Force. Ben? I'm so cold, Ben. So cold. Your own fault for deciding to visit Minnesota, Luke. Especially Fawn Circle. You must go to the Dagobah system. You will learn from Yoda, the Jedi Master, the one who taught me. Wait, I thought Qui-Gon was your master. That bastard's dead to me ever since he stole my credit card to feed his gambling habit. You must, Luke. You're our only hope. The expanded universe hasn't introduced the thousands of Jedi who are still running around. Until then, you're our only hope. Luke passes out, Han thankfully managing to locate him a few seconds later. Unfortunately, the Tauntaun dies from the cold immediately after. Is it weird that a Tauntaun, a species that is native to Hoth, keels over before Han does? I mean, I get that it's exhausted from moving through the storm, but it seems like it should be more resilient than these two to this sort of thing. Unlike in the movie, we don't see Han cutting the Tauntaun open to keep Luke warm while he sets up a shelter. While the rest of our heroes are worried about them back at the base, fortunately in the morning, they're soon rescued by a speeder. Echo Base, this is Rogue 2. I found them. Repeat, I found them. Man, Rogue 2 had a happier ending than Rogue 1 did. Back at the base, Luke is put into a healing tube. Yeah, back to tank, but I see these things in science fiction all the time, so to me they're just healing tubes full of healing juices. Space-age technology is just pickling things. Leia is grateful to Han for finding him, but he says they have to be more concerned with whatever attacked him. And indeed, there's a Wampa storming through the base and the troops fight it. And that's the end of it! One panel, then in the command center they report that it's over and they can detect them now. In the movie, this was a cut subplot of a few scenes, including trapping one inside of a room and putting a warning label on the door. That 3PO ripped off when the Empire attacked so that snowtroopers could meet the Wampas when they went exploring. It's good that they cut it because it doesn't contribute anything to the story, but it does suck to lose a fun moment of 3PO of all people managing to deliver some indirect damage to the villains. Anyway, with that non-plot out of the way, a recon station detects the probe droid, and just blows up. I mean, I guess that it's supposed to be the probe droid shot them, but there isn't a line or anything indicating that.
Don't move a muscle or we'll shoot you with our invisible guns.
Han and Chewbacca head out next to check it out, Han managing to get a shot off on it. And kablamo! I didn't hit it that hard, but they had some kind of self-destruct. All I did was hit it in that bag of dynamite it was carrying. We cut over to deep space, where a super Star Destroyer gets a report from the destroyed probe. Unfortunately, I think the letterer accidentally gave the word balloons to the wrong people here, as Captain Piet reports this to Admiral Ozzel. Sure, they're far away, but in the next panel we see Ozzel, and he looks more like Piet. Anyway, Ozzel disregards the report, saying that it could be anything, and that a minor lead isn't anything to go by. Darth Vader, however,
however, is aboard and says that the Hoth system is definitely where they are, leading us into issue 40. With the likelihood of the Empire soon coming to Hoth, the rebels start preparing for an attack and evacuation. I spoke a little too soon earlier, as we do have the bit of the Wampa trapped in a closet or whatever, though only for 3PO to comment on it. It has no bearing on anything else. Also, Wampa is another example of a Star Wars name somehow entering the popular lexicon, even though it is never spoken on screen. Weird, isn't it? Luke is having his face mask removed before they put on the makeup, or rather it's healing his injuries as Leia comes to check on him. You know, Leia, when I was lost out there in that snow and ice and it looked pretty bad, well, I felt afraid for you. Leia, I don't really know how to say this, but you must know that you're the only one Somewhere, Obi-Wan is out there screaming, "Oh God, why didn't I warn them about this? No!" Before the two can kiss, thankfully 3PO and R2 enter and interrupt. However, even if the two weren't actually siblings, Luke would throw some cold water on the whole thing with this line. Leia, wait. What would you think if I went away for a while, to another system, a place called Dagobah? What? That's just fine. First Han, now you! Wait, you don't understand! I want to take you to Dagobah Disneyland, but I need to scope it out first! Han and Chewbacca come in, and yeah, this is actually the last scene in the movie where all of our principal leads are together, which I know was also a bit contentious for people when the movie came out. I think the story is told well enough that it doesn't make a difference, but anyway, Han has been informed that he can't leave now until they're certain about the Imperial probe droid. But Han just assumes that Leia is using that as an excuse to keep him there, especially after expressing your true feelings when we were alone the other day, that she'd rather kiss a Wookiee. Leia decides to settle this by grabbing Luke and making out with him right there. I'd just like to remind you all that R2-D2 was present at their births and knows damn well who they are now, and is now watching this happen and probably trying his damnedest to contain all his beeps and boops of laughter about this. I guess neither of you understand everything about women, do you? I don't. I figure you would have kissed 3PO to try to make that point. It says something that a lot of this dialogue was changed for the finished movie. Less friendly banter and barbs like fuzzball or scruffy-looking nerf herder. Hell, even the art seems to reflect this, as everyone seems more meh or angry instead of any smiles. The closest you get is when Han enters, and that expression less says, "I'm happy you're alive," and more, "My boat." The order of events was also changed here. In the movie, the scene with the probe droid being destroyed was after Luke's recovery. Outside the system, Vader and his fleet arrive, although instead of being in his private chamber when he learns this, he's out in a corridor. There's an energy shield protecting the planet that will resist any laser bombardment from orbit, meaning a ground assault is their only option. To Vader's annoyance, Ozzel came out of lightspeed too close to the system.
We're coming on too strong. This relationship won't get off the ground now.
He felt that surprise was a wiser, "He is as clumsy as he is stupid."
The man keeps tripping over me and spilling my coffee.
On the bridge, Ozzel's about to update Vader when Vader force chokes him to death without even raising his hand. This is definitely all a shift from how Vader was portrayed in A New Hope. More a high-ranking servant of Tarkin rather than the man in charge as he is here, casually killing his officers who fail him. You know, Anakin's problem was that he cared too much about people. Oh, I'm an asshole. Anyway, yeah, this art is once again mixing up Ozzel and Piet. Piet's the thin, tall guy, while Ozzel is the guy with the mustache. So Vader killed the wrong guy here. Although that could just be a sign that Vader doesn't really pay attention to any of these people. He just waits for them to stop talking. He's actually killed 5 different guys that he just keeps calling Admiral Ozzel. Leia briefs the troops on the evacuation plan. Fighters providing escort for the larger transports to leave when they temporarily drop the shield, with ground-based ion cannons providing covering fire. Meanwhile, Han and Chewie continue to try to repair the Falcon. "That should do it, Chewie! Let's give the lifters a try!" And it explodes. Alright, so that doesn't do it! Damn Apple anti-repair practices! As the plan begins and they knock out a Star Destroyer, Luke prepares to head into a speeder to help fight against the ground invasion. He and Han say their farewells, mostly knowing looks in the movie, but this is still good. "Han, I hope you make your peace with Jabba, even if it does throw half the galaxy's bounty hunters out of work." Han Solo, industry disruptor. The speeders, like a TIE fighter, are designed to have 2 pilots, a gunner and a driver, so Luke joins his gunner, Dak, inside one. "Glad to see you back and well, sir. Now I feel like we can take on the whole Empire." Yeah. I know what you mean. I have a ghost whispering in my brain to tell me when to shoot things. We're gonna be fine. And thus begins the attack of the Imperial Walkers, or AT-ATs. Huge, imposing, somewhat impractical design, but they're scary as hell, which is kind of the point. To quote Stargate SG-1, it's a weapon of terror, meant to intimidate the enemy, rather than a weapon of war designed to kill the enemy. Mind you, the rebels aren't exactly armed with floating tanks and capital warships, so the impracticality of a slow, lumbering camel that can only shoot what's in front of it is kind of mitigated. Imperial Walkers advancing on your position! Advancing! And firing! Wait a second, they're firing directly into the air! They're switching sides! The walkers are heavily armored, though, so the speeder's weapons do nothing. It's made no better by Dak getting killed when a shot hits him and Luke. While Leia announces an acceleration of the evacuation, despite the increased risk of sending more than one transport at a time, Luke comes up with a new strategy for the remaining speeders. Use their tow cables and harpoons to wrap around the legs of the walkers and entangle them so they trip and fall over. And while in the movie, suddenly this makes them much more susceptible to laser fire somehow, here they really shouldn't have stored all those oily rags and gunpowder because it just frickin' blows up upon collapsing. This is why your evil empire really shouldn't buy from the lowest bidder, people. Just imagine this thing tripping on a pothole and just spontaneously combusting. Luke's speeder gets shot down, though he's able to escape it. Weirdly, this is where the issue ends instead of holding the suspense of the walker crushing it. After our standard issue recap page, that actually shows events from later, Luke works out a plan to deal with the AT-AT about to shoot their power generator. Okay, I can use the Force to move things with my mind, so I'll throw my lightsaber up and slice through everything! Yeah! Okay, plan B. He uses a magnetic grapple gun to climb up to the underside of the walker, uses his lightsaber to slice open a hole, then chucks a grenade inside before dropping down again. Still, it's only delaying the inevitable as Han goes to retrieve Leia, get her to evacuate too. She gives the final evacuation order for all remaining troops and heads out, but the way to her escape transport is blocked off by falling debris, so their only shot is the Falcon. As they make their way inside, enemy troops begin pouring in. Somewhere behind them, the last defenses fall before advancing stormtroopers. So is there an EU explanation why this says stormtroopers and not snowtroopers? Because I know with Star Wars, we're not allowed to have mistakes or shorthand for general terminology. Now joined personally by their supreme commander.
God, I love snow. Total opposite of sand. When we're all done here, let's make a snowman.
The Falcon's repairs are incomplete, and they just barely manage to escape from the hangar bay while being shot at by the snowtroopers. While 3PO ended up with the Falcon crew, R2 sticks with Luke to be the support droid for his X-Wing as he makes his own escape from Hoth. But as the Falcon becomes a twinkle in Hoth's cold blue sky, Luke wonders when he'll see his friends again, for his rendezvous will not be the one determined by the Rebel Alliance. Instead, an awkward meeting at a public bathroom. Unlike the movie, we actually learn that several of the Rebel ships were destroyed in the evacuation, as reported to Darth Vader. But the fleet's tracking scanners are on the Millennium Falcon.
I want that ship.
But sir, why are you so obsessed with that ship in particular? What?
Because I want Skywalker, obviously.
They reach orbit but are blocked by two Star Destroyers. Fortunately, Han's a hell of a pilot and manages to outmaneuver them to the point where they collide with each other. However, they can't pull the same trick against fighters, so they try to jump to light speed and fail. The hyperdrive is damaged. While they're chased off, Luke heads in a different direction in his X-Wing. That's right, little guy, I'm not regrouping with the others. Strange as it seems, we're going to a place Ben Kenobi told me about. A place called Dagobah. It's the Benihana of space! Yes, I heard about it from him when I was wounded and wandering in that blizzard back on Hoth, but trust me, R2, this isn't a relapse. R2-D2 is now just realizing that he is stuck in a spaceship with this guy. Dagobah is apparently not on any navigational charts, but Luke instinctively knows where to go. Back to the chase, the Empire forces our heroes into a densely packed asteroid field. If I might remind you, Captain, the probability of successfully navigating such an obstacle is approximately 2,467 to 1! And the odds are even worse if it's a Tesla! Fortunately, despite Han's screw-ups and almost everything else, the man knows how to pilot a ship and manages to outmaneuver the TIE fighters, which get blown up the farther they go in.
Meanwhile, not far away, at least in a galaxy where light years are spanned simply as kilometers.
Wait, does that mean in a galaxy far, far away actually just means a few kilometers away? Newly Admiraled Piet goes to see Vader. Hesitant, uneasy, Piet enters the private chamber. Well, you would be hesitant and uneasy too. This place doesn't get aired out very often, and Vader's personal hygiene in his quarters can be most charitably described as mildewy. Jokes aside, the purpose of this brief scene, showing Vader's helmet being lowered onto his head, is to remind the viewers that there's actually a person under that armor, that he's not a robot or something. The breathing sound of Vader isn't something just done for dramatic effect, it's because that's legitimately someone breathing air. Piet informs Vader about the Millennium Falcon entering the asteroid field. Asteroids don't concern me, Admiral. I want that ship. Not excuses.
Pizza party in the break room if you guys get your extra work done before the end of the fiscal quarter.
While Piet tries to summon his voice from a tight, dry throat, a cape is mechanically lowered and the Dark Lord stands. You know, that's something I hadn't thought of before. At some point when rebuilding Anakin, Palpatine decided, yeah, give him a cape. A cape would look so cool on him. And then had to build a device to actually attach a cape to him, because it's not like that outfit affords him a lot of dexterity to put one on himself. In the asteroid field, Han recognizes that they need to hide somewhere out of sight of the Star Destroyers, so they find a big asteroid full of caverns and enter it. Luke, meanwhile, arrives at Dagobah and, unlike the movie, almost seems to have a safer landing. Although that's relative, since he's still parked halfway inside of a bog. We end the issue with this goblin-looking dude watching over the scene, and I'm sure has no significance whatsoever. On to issue 42. And now, the Bounty Hunters, performing their touching love ballad, Don't Disintegrate My Heart. The splash page recap for this one continues the stuff with the bounty hunters as if they played a much larger role in the film than they actually did. Especially weird that they're looming over Luke in the swamp, as if he's the one they're going to be contending with. The comic cuts out the entire sequence of Luke realizing how sucky it is to be in a swamp, and R2 getting eaten and spit out by a giant fish or whatever. Good cuts to make overall, but it also kind of screws over Luke's state of mind when he's going into this. Luke is young, impatient, and annoyed by this entire situation. We joke about Luke being whiny, but that's only because he's confronted by a lot of really irritating little things. Like, say, trying to follow some half-remembered hallucination telling him to go find a Jedi Master to continue his training, instead of going to help his friends in the rebellion, only to find a damp, humid, muddy, dark swamp full of bugs and things trying to eat his robot. Here, he just got out of the swamp, and it's like, boy, this place is weird, huh? Plus, because of how time can be a bit wonky in Star Wars, we don't know how long it's been since he got out of the healing tube. For all we know, yesterday he's mauled and almost freezes to death. Today, a friend dies, he almost gets stepped on by a stop-motion model, and now all the swamp stuff. Although, there's something familiar about it. I'm pretty sure Uncle Owen took me here on a camping trip when I was 5, and I hated it. And thus our little gremlin dude reveals himself, Luke pulling out his lightsaber instead of his blaster like in the movie. Away put your weapon! I mean you no harm, but I am wondering, why are you here? Perhaps help you I can. For a finder's fee, of course. I don't think so. You see, I'm looking for a great warrior. Charles Barkley. A great warrior? Not many of those. Wars don't make one great. Being good at hockey does it. The creature takes, like, a French fry from Luke's box and tries to eat it. Looked more like a breadstick in the movie. Hey, the food concentrate stick was gonna be my dinner!
This chicken's like something from outer space. Just feed it a little bit. It's cooked to fuck.
The wizened little intruder seems unimpressed, particularly when he starts to chew and promptly spits out the bite taken. Phew! How you get so big eating food of this kind? Grape jelly and mustard, wrong with you the hell is! Come, I take you to good food. To Applebee's we go! Help you find your friend! I'm not looking for a friend, I'm looking for a Jedi Master. Oh, a Jedi Master! Different altogether! Yoda, you seek Yoda! I take you to him, come! You know him? My boyfriend he is! Absolute wampa in the sack! The order of things is changed again because the creature now grabs the little electric lamp and takes it with him as he leads Luke off. Unfortunately, the comic really just cannot convey what a little gremlin he is here. Instead, just seemingly showing him standing around instead of digging through everything, being annoying, just doesn't really work for the sake of the contrast we'll have later. Anyway, Luke tells R2 to stick around and guard the ship. Back at the asteroid field, the Star Destroyers are searching for our heroes. 2 Imperial cruisers move through the asteroid field to which they have tracked the Millennium Falcon, bombing as they go. And by bombing, they mean shooting lasers everywhere, sometimes directly into the cavern the Falcon is in, rather than the TIE bombers we saw in the movie. Still, inside the very purple asteroid, Han and 3PO are trying to make repairs. I don't know where your ship learned to communicate, Captain, but its dialect leaves something to be desired. It keeps rambling on about droid liberation or something. Also, that you're not her real boyfriend? A lot of minor differences here, to the detriment of the comic versus the movie. Little character bits, for instance. 3PO points out something that needs to be replaced, Han just grumpily tells Chewie to replace it. Rather than in the film, him whispering to Chewie since he doesn't want to acknowledge 3PO is right about something. Furthermore, he checks on Leia, who's annoyed by him trying to help and finally gets him to ease off his douchiness for a second and be somewhat charming. The comic lacks instinctively rubbing Leia's hand when she minorly injures it. Admittedly, in either version, he's still coming off too strong, but it's easier to believe what happens next. Leia and him start kissing because he's not yelling in her face about how she wants him. And for some reason, they don't have 3PO interrupt them to break off the kiss. Leia just kind of awkwardly moves away and the narration says, well, now she's feeling weird that she actually kind of liked that. The romance between the two feels a bit iffier in hindsight. Han just kind of continually going, yeah, you dig me, and being aggressive and pissy in the early stages. It's not terrible, like I said. Moments like this, while a bit wince-inducing when she asks him to stop rubbing her hand and he doesn't, help show that he has a charming quality that could show him as someone she'd be into. I'm not saying the romance is bad, just that some moments are a bit more... In any case, Vader is soon contacted by the Emperor and he takes the call in his chamber. What is thy bidding, my master? There is a grave disturbance in the Force.
I can tell. You don't sound right, my master.
Linkara decided to go for the original Marjorie Eaton and Clive Revel version of my voice instead of Ian McDiarmid.
That seems like an odd choice.
But it's authentic to the original time of printing, much like his decision not to use the redone colors. On that note, yeah, I don't mind the special edition replacement of the Emperor with McDiarmid. It is the odd one out when you look at the whole saga, really when it comes to stuff like the special editions. I just wish they made sure to do decent re-releases of the originals, or at least as close to the originals as possible, for the sake of film preservation rather than erasing them. Anyway, the comic decides to keep the Emperor entirely in shadow for this, just the silhouette of a guy in a robe. You must destroy him, my servant, or he will be our undoing. He's not a Jedi. Just a boy. Obi-Wan could not have taught him very much.
He knows nothing of the high ground, my master.
Yet with the Force so strong with him, he could be a powerful ally, if he could be turned. For a long moment, the huge holograph image flickers slightly. I mean, when does it not? I reiterate that even in expanded universe lore, at least 1,000 years before the original trilogy, hologram communication technology never gets better than something with terrible V-Sync issues. Yes, he would be a great asset. Can it be done?
With enough investor money.
Back over to Dagobah, Luke is hanging out in the creature's house as he makes some stew. Luke is impatient and just wants to find Yoda, and the creature finally drops the act, revealing that he's Yoda. No good this. This will not do. I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience. Okay, there's patience, and then there's weird little goblin steals my food and hits my robot with a stick. This is also a case where sadly the art doesn't really do this scene much justice. This close-up of Luke's face when Yoda says he can't teach him. In the movie, we see Yoda front and center and how his entire demeanor changes from bumbling and silly to serious, wise, and disappointed. Instead, it's just a word balloon off to the side before a close-up of Yoda's slightly more beefy appearance here. Thing is, because of the way the art has depicted Yoda so far, he doesn't look any different here than he was before, so the fake-out doesn't quite work as well. Now, I joked a second ago about the patience thing, but in truth, the entire sequence is indeed a test for Luke. How he'll react to something like this, and he's shown to be uncaring, kinda rude, and emphasizing the wrong things. A great warrior, insulting Dagobah to one of its inhabitants, caring more about finding Yoda than anything else. A New Hope showed us the potential of Luke. Bright, eager, committed to do the right thing, and ending up the hero. But now it's time to show how these same qualities can be used negatively. Luke is human and thus imperfect, and we're finally seeing his flaws so he can actually develop. Obi-Wan's Force Ghost is hanging around and tries to encourage Yoda to train Luke. You will learn patience. We've discussed this before. Just because I'm a ghost now doesn't mean it's easy to go between planets, you know? Don't make me think my trips were wasted. Luke says he's perfectly ready to be a Jedi, leaving out where his pleading leads to him bonking his head, a nice demonstration of his impatience. Yoda breaks down Luke's problem. To become a Jedi takes the deepest commitment. All his life, this one has looked away to the horizon, to the sky, to the future, never his mind on where he was, what he was doing. Adventure, excitement. A Jedi craves not these things. I mean, follow Jedi teachings did I, and look how good I've got it. You will learn, Yoda. We have come this far. He is our only hope. That line is really just why I'm bugged about so many Jedi escaping Order 66 in the expanded universe or in TV shows or whatever. Because clearly you have tons and tons of hopes. The only reason Luke would be special as their last hope is that somehow he's got super duper force powers like Anakin did, and I've made my feelings about the divine right of King's crap known in the other reviews. I know I'm reckless, but I've learned a lot already. I won't fail you. I'm not afraid. You will be, my young one. You will be. But don't be, because fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. A whole thing it is. Back over to the Falcon, we skip Leia being scared of something on the windshield, just them deciding to check out some weird noises. And in fact, it's Leia who identifies the bat creature thing as a Mynock instead of Han. However, they realize that's something weird about the cave. There's too much moisture and the ground feels spongy instead of hard. Han fires a shot off into the darkness and everything starts shaking. He quickly has everyone come back in and they take off, flying out as the mouth of the cave closes. We were inside something. Something alive. A giant slug, probably.
Who shall we have worm sign the likes of which even God has never seen?
Back over to Dagobah. And here's something that I'm really glad they didn't keep in the movie. Yoda is training Luke on lightsaber combat. He fails to hit a metal bar that was in the air. Can't. Not after running through miles of swamp with you on my back. Too tired. That bar would be in 7 pieces if you were a Jedi. In the movie, Yoda never, not once, has Luke use the lightsaber. And we'll get into why in a minute, but there's something else we can talk about. What the hell's going on with Yoda in this panel? Is this just a weird perspective thing, like he's farther away in the swamp water or something? Because it looks like he's tiny and resting on Luke's shoulder with a really warped head. What follows is a montage, and once again a wonky timescale here, as Luke learns to use the lightsaber, and a teensy tiny Yoda sits on some toadstools. Luke levitates some rocks and also suspends himself up by his pinky or whatever. The implication is that Luke spends days, possibly weeks or months here, both in the movie and the comic, but that's kind of off from the Falcon's side of things. Admittedly, we don't know how long they were in the asteroid, how long it takes to get to their next destination. Yeah, light speed is down, but the kinds of distances we're talking about here should mean they die of old age before reaching it otherwise under realistic measures. Or how long they stay there, but it feels like months is a stretch. Anyway, Luke discovers his X-Wing is sunk into the swamp. He tries and fails to get it out of the water. It's worse than we left it! This is a lot different than moving stones. I'm trying, but I can't. It's too big. Try not. Do, or do not. There is no try. Attempting things isn't real. Size has no meaning. Look at me. Judge me by my size? No. Leapfrog around you with a lightsaber I can, whippersnapper. And here's the kicker. And well, you shouldn't. For my ally is the Force. And powerful it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. It surrounds and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not just crude flesh. Feel it you must. Feel the Force flow. Feel the Force around you, everywhere, waiting to be used. Between you and me. Between the trees and the rocks. Yes, even between this land and that ship. But screw all that! Cutting an inanimate carbon rod into 7 pieces is what really matters to be a Jedi.
Yeah, that's why seeing Yoda train Luke with a lightsaber is so dumb. Because the actual important part is mastery of the Force. Understanding its complexities, letting it flow into you, learning of how to control it and how it controls you. Because the Force is something more and it's not intended for violence or destruction or combat. You can certainly use it for those things, but a Jedi is supposed to be about peace, serenity, calm. Hell, I noticed the comic left out Yoda's lines about a Jedi using the Force for knowledge and defense. Never attack. Anytime a piece of media puts a lot of emphasis on a lightsaber being so important, I wince. A lightsaber is a tool, a way that can express your mastery in the Force, but that kind of combat training wouldn't be in Yoda's teachings because it's not about waving around a stick. It's about more than the physical. So yeah, as demonstration of that, Yoda lifts the X-Wing out of the swamp, to Luke's amazement. It is not given the grandeur the moment has in the film, though I somewhat get it because of condensing the narrative. Hell, he's still making the speech about luminous beings while lifting the thing here. And again, why the hell is Yoda like the size of a pixie? Sure, size matters not, but we already established how big he was, and the movie was out by now. Why is he smaller than Luke's head? Anyway, 12 pages in, and now, the bounty hunters. Vader has recruited a bunch of them to hunt down the Millennium Falcon.
There will be a substantial reward for the one who finds the Millennium Falcon. You and your band are highly regarded in your particular trade, Boba Fett. Do not disappoint me.
Given a free hand, I've never disappointed anyone. You say that, but I've seen your Disney Plus series. It was fine. Mandalorian Season 2.5.
You are free to use any method necessary, but I want proof. No disintegrations.
You know, much like the shapeshifter revelation from the prequels, I do have to kind of tilt my head at that line the more I think about it. Have we ever seen a handheld weapon in the movies or TV shows that would vaporize someone? I don't know, there are a few shows I haven't seen yet, but still. In any case, I also love that this version of the dialogue implies that these guys all work for Boba Fett and are not just several different bounty hunters being briefed. Also, hey Bosk, why is your spacesuit blue here? However, this little party is interrupted when he's informed that they found the Falcon again. Regardless of how long it's been, the hyperdrive is still broken and they've cleared the asteroid field, so there's nowhere to run. As such, Han figures out a plan, running right at the Star Destroyer pursuing them, and they seem to vanish from their sensors. We quickly see what happened. Han landed the Falcon directly on the Star Destroyer's hull. Some dude is bringing his date to the most scenic window on the ship and wondering why the hell it's all covered up. We check in on Luke and Yoda, who is indeed still training Luke with the lightsaber, though here we're using it better, to illustrate the point Yoda had made in the movie with running and jumping, although the order of these scenes has been twisted around. This was supposed to be before using the Force to raise the X-Wing. Luke is skilled enough to cut the rod into 4 pieces now, but he's disappointed in himself. But it's taking so long! A Jedi could do 7! Let me try again. This time I'm angry enough to— No! Anger, fear, aggression. The dark side of the Force are they. Easily do they flow. A Force laxative it is. Quick to join you in a fight. Beware, a heavy price is paid for the power they bring. Your wardrobe into all black clothes it becomes. Easier, quicker, more seductive is the dark side. But once you start down that path, forever will it dominate. Consume you it will, as it did Obi-Wan's apprentice. Seen here, a man consumed by the dark side.
You're so beautiful.
My boat.
Back to Vader. Lord Vader, our complete scan has found nothing. The Millennium Falcon must have gone into light speed. It's no doubt on the other side of the galaxy now, as opposed to where we are, the polka-dotted side of the galaxy. As the Star Destroyers prepare to leave, Han tells the others his plan. It's standard Imperial procedure to dump their garbage before going into light speed. Littering. Truly the Empire's greatest sin. So they'll power down, disconnect, and pretend to be garbage floating away. That old pizza box is shaped like the Millennium Falcon. And it's as big as a freighter. Man, Vader was hungry today. And thus they make their escape, Leia complimenting him on the plan. Now that they're free, they need to go someplace safe to make repairs. Han checks his records and sees that the Bespin system is nearby, with a place run by an old friend of his, Lando Calrissian. Can you trust him, Han? Sure, last time I saw him, he became Childish Gambino. As the Falcon heads out to Bespin, what they don't see is that another piece of space garbage is actually Boba Fett's ship Slave One, which pursues him and ends the issue.
On the planet Dagobah, Luke Skywalker is in training to become a Jedi under the centuries-old master, Yoda. Pictured here? None of that.
Like, even the next paragraph brings up Boba Fett pursuing the Millennium Falcon, and neither party is on the page either. It's Cloud City on Bespin, along with Lando and his people. Still though, next page we get the Falcon arriving there, and getting warning shots fired at them from the locals. They're instructed to land at a specific platform, where Lando is waiting for them.
Han Solo, you slimy, double-crossing, no-good swindler. I can explain everything, buddy.
I know I photoshopped you out of the swimsuit calendar, but that's only because the higher-ups very wrongly assumed you weren't photogenic enough.
Suddenly, Lando can hold his scowl no longer. Laughter fills the morning air, and blasters are swiftly lowered.
But we're not going to show any of that. Here's a heavily in shadows Lando with a blank expression on his face. They explain how the Falcon needs repairs, and we learn that the ship used to belong to Lando. Which, hilariously, if you've seen Solo, you know that Han managed to turn the gorgeous interiors of the ship into a cruddy mess over the years, since I guess he refuses to dust or anything. While Lando reassures them that he'll get his best people on it, 3PO, for no reason in the comic, wanders off on his own. Lando is now responsible for the entire outpost, no longer a smuggler and schemer like Han was, but let's forget about that for a second. 3PO thinks he overhears an R2 unit and goes to investigate, but when he enters a room that it came from, whatever's on the other side, well,
the sentence is cut short by the ugly whine of laser bolts.
As this comic goes on, it just becomes more and more terrified of showing things happening and is letting the narration carry it. Back on Dagobah, Yoda's grown to slightly better proportions, and we get the tree scene. Something's not right, Yoda. I feel danger, death, cold. It's like having a conversation with David Zaslav.
This tree is strong with the dark side of the Force. A servant of evil it is. Into it you must go.
How does a tree become strong with the dark side? Is there a bunch of kudzu on it or something? Is it actually an Ent who got corrupted? Is it the monster from the movie From Hell It Came? What's in there, Master?
Only what you take with you.
So you're saying if there's $100 in my wallet, there'll be another $100 waiting in there?
Your weapon. You won't need it.
A lunchbox you may need, though. It's a long trip. He steps into the cave with the lightsaber anyway, and is confronted by Darth Vader. Oh no, Luke had a Darth Vader action figure in his pocket! He's also not wearing a shirt for some reason, but he fights the image of Darth Vader and strikes it down.
The black helmet mask separates from the body, falling with a dreamlike motion to shatter upon the cavern floor, and reveal the greatest nightmare of all.
That's right, Mr. Computer. No, that's my face! Yeah, thanks for the exposition, Luke. Would have been real nice if we could see that and not have you announce it, but, you know, we needed the splash page recap. And then a splash page of the Falcon approaching Cloud City. And each of these books only has about 17 pages, less than most regular comics. Why is this episode so long when it feels like sometimes there isn't much content? In the movie, there was a brief, surreal fight, because I guess Luke only brought half the frames in with him. But it conveyed that weird dreamlike quality before he cut off Vader's head and was confronted with his own face behind the mask, his fear of falling to the dark side like Obi-Wan's apprentice, and potential foreshadowing for the big twist. Back over to Cloud City, Leia's wondering what the hell happened to 3PO, and again, we're uncertain of the timescale of things. It doesn't seem like they've been here longer than a day or two, but who knows how long they actually are. Chewie interrupts Han and Leia kissing again with 3PO in pieces, having found him in a junk pile about to be recycled. Him actually finding 3PO's body was cut for this adaptation, and definitely a good cut for the comic. Not that the scene was bad, just that it's unnecessary. Han thinks that if Chewie can't repair him, they should hand him over to Lando, but Leia has been growing distrustful of him over, well, nothing. Speaking of, Lando comes in and offers them the chance to join him for some refreshments.
Ah, I see you found the droid we were going to recycle into the silverware for said refreshments.
On Dagobah, Luke's meditations into the Force cause him to have a vision of the future, of his friends suffering at Cloud City. Luke wants to go help them, but Yoda cautions him against it.
If you leave now, help them you could, but you would destroy all for which they have fought and suffered.
And come with you to help and train you on the way I cannot, because,
Waiting for something from Space Amazon could take weeks.
The comic version of Cloud City has them walking around outside more with the standard Star Wars walkways without safety railings, and they talk about how cool the place is. Han wonders if the Empire will learn about their mining operations, but Lando says he just cut a deal that'll keep the Empire out forever. And he opens the door to the dining hall to reveal Darth Vader and Boba Fett, Lando saying that they arrived just before Han did. Han quickly pulls his gun and fires, and Vader demonstrates his own skill by just holding out his hand and deflecting the shots effortlessly.
Boba Fett and I would be honored if you would join us. Boba Fett cooked chicken wings with his signature barbecue sauce.
Luke can't stand the visions of his friends suffering any longer and prepares to leave. Obi-Wan's Force Ghost appears entirely and discourages him. You're not ready, Luke. You feel the Force, but cannot control it. You are now most susceptible to the temptations of the dark side. Temptations like cool capes and torturing your friends. Okay, admittedly it's more an emotional and psychological thing, but still. Only a fully trained Jedi Knight will conquer Vader and his Emperor. Well, gee, Mr. More Powerful Than You Can Possibly Imagine, why don't you and the Pixie Frog come along to help then? Choose the quick and easy path and you'll become an agent of evil, plunging the galaxy into the abyss of hate and despair. What about any of this is the quick and easy path? You are the last Jedi. Be patient. Come episode 8, Luke remembers those words while confronting Kylo Ren and is like, sure, Obi-Wan. Luke can't sacrifice Han and Leia and promises to heed their words, but also to return and finish his training later. As the X-Wing departs, he's still reckless, Yoda. Things are going to get worse, I fear. But the boy is our last hope. No, Obi-Wan. There is another. So, George Lucas originally planned at this point to not only have a prequel trilogy, but a sequel trilogy that'd focus on Luke's long-lost twin sister, who would eventually be the one to take down the Emperor in said sequel trilogy. Vader would be the ultimate villain of this trilogy. But what gets me is that he chose to make Leia Luke's sister when he abandoned his plans to do more movies after Return of the Jedi in order to fulfill the "there is another" plans. But nothing about this dialogue indicates that it's supposed to be a sister. Why couldn't Leia just be really strong in the Force and thus another hope? It's one of the things that bothers me so much about the divine right of kings crap and all the backlash against Rey doing Jedi stuff in Force Awakens. It's like people forget that Force-sensitive people are being born all the time. They didn't just stop happening when the Jedi were wiped out. It just meant no one was recruiting them anymore. People with the same powers and potential for good or evil, as long as someone told them, hey, did you know you could do this? But whatever. At Cloud City, Han is being tortured by Vader, knowing that his pain will be a beacon to Luke to bring him there. He tells Boba Fett that he'll get Solo when Luke arrives, and further tells Lando that Leia and Chewbacca have to stay in the city for the rest of their lives. Lando objects, saying that this was never part of their deal.
I hope you don't think you're being treated unfairly, Calrissian. It would be most unfortunate if I had to leave a permanent garrison at your outpost. And you won't have Boba Fett around to cook for them.
In his cell, Chewbacca is allowed to repair 3PO, who regains consciousness, though his head is on backwards. Is there no end to a droid's suffering? Blasted to pieces for accidentally bumping into some stormtroopers? You know, that's something I hadn't thought of before. If it was just some stormtroopers who did this, what was making the R2 unit noises that led him there in the first place? Han is shoved into the cell afterwards, and Lando explains what's going on, that he didn't know about the bounty on Han or anything, but is trying to make this easier on them. He also explains that this was all just a way to get Luke to them. Han punches him for all this, and Lando lets him get away with that. I've done as much as I can. I wish it were more, but I've got my own problems. I've already stuck my neck out further than I should. Yeah, Lando. You're a real hero. I gotta say, this is the worst episode of the Calrissian Chronicles. Vader, meanwhile, decides the best way to contain Luke once he arrives is to free him in a substance called carbamite. Lando is reluctant about the plan, saying that it might kill him. As such, Vader plans to test it on Han Solo. As Luke's X-Wing arrives, Han is readied and Leia finally admits that she loves him.
Just remember that, Leia, because I'll be back.
Admittedly, I'll probably be Mr. Freeze next time you see me, but still. In the movie, it's the oft-remembered "I know" in response, which a friend of mine did find a little iffy in hindsight, that's not really reassuring to the woman you love, but I think it's more about him acknowledging her admittance. She already knows he's into her, but after all this time, as she's expressed her frustration with him and all, it's about reassuring him that she does indeed love him, and he's telling her,
I know, don't worry. You don't have to be worried about me not knowing. And so Han is turned into a human popsicle to end out the issue, leading to the final part. Vader's informed of Luke's arrival, and he orders a permanent garrison be set up in Cloud City to make sure Leia and Chewie never leave. In the movie, he actually decided to take them with him, which makes more sense. Leia's a bigwig in the rebellion. There's no reason why she wouldn't be taken for interrogation. That wasn't our bargain. You said the Empire wouldn't interfere and
I'm altering the bargain. Pray I don't alter it any further.
Unfortunately for Vader, Lando soon brought him to space court with the best lawyer in the galaxy, whom Vader then force-choked. In the comic, he even briefly force-chokes Lando. Jeez. Luke spots them carrying Han away, but Boba Fett shoots at him before he can do anything to stop them. He even spots the others being escorted away, but Leia just screams at him that it's a trap before a blast door cuts him off from them and R2. Luke is led into the carbon freezing chamber to confront Vader.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you're not a Jedi yet.
For that, you have to complete the certification exam. And there's a fee to take it.
And thus, while Luke and Vader begin their fight, Lando switches sides, getting his security forces to hold the stormtroopers and free our heroes. Chewbacca takes this all well. However, he finally gets them to see reason when he points out they can still free Han from Boba Fett. R2 meets up with them as they reach the landing platform, but they're too late. Boba Fett taking flight as more stormtroopers arrive. They head off to reach the Millennium Falcon while Luke and Vader fight, and the colorist made a choice, certainly. Instead of the dark, smoky industrial area of the movie, it's very bright while Luke and Vader remain in shadows and almost silhouettes. It kinda works to further Vader's imposing figure, but honestly it just feels like they were running out of time to finish and figured a big black void would be easier to have. There's something to be said for making him out as this kind of dark, corrupting, inky force, but it really feels just kind of awkward, especially when I know what it's supposed to look like. Luke is knocked into the carbon freezing chamber, but he leaps out before he can be frozen. Not that you see it, of course, because instead he has to announce in the next panel that he leapt up really far. Look, I get it, movie adaptations can be hard and you're on a rush deadline, but it feels like some motion lines here would have done the job and not been as awkward.
Obi-Wan has taught you well. You've controlled your fear. Now release your anger. I destroyed your family. Take your revenge.
Yes, my brilliant plan is that he will kill me and then join my side. Wait.
Because we need to rush things along, Luke is suddenly in a completely different hallway for the continuation of the fight.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
Luke, worried about giving into his darker impulses, hesitates as Vader eggs him on and starts tossing random bits of machinery at him with the Force. Eventually, he's shoved through a window and is on a narrow platform to continue the fight.
Why resist further? You are beaten, Luke. Don't let yourself be destroyed as Obi-Wan did.
You'll be called a ripoff, Luke. Let yourself be destroyed in an original way.
Our heroes continue their chase to the Falcon, continually finding themselves intercepted by stormtroopers who I definitely think earned the reputation of being bad shots here. Sure, you can say in A New Hope they wanted the Falcon to escape, but here, no, their aim sucks. And once again, Lando announces he did something off-panel that we saw in the movie to get things along, telling the citizens of Cloud City to evacuate as the Empire is taking over. Which sadly spares us the iconic scene of this dude running away with an ice cream maker. I don't know why that fact perplexes people so much. Reusing random bits of junk as props is a time-honored tradition, especially before 3D printers were more common. I can show you behind the scenes of Star Trek stuff and how much props they made out of everyday objects of the time. And thus we reach one of the most egregious examples of the comic leaving out something and only explaining it in narration. Back at the reactor core, above the shaft's howling winds, the steady clash of sabers can be heard, until the Dark Lord's blade comes slicing through part of the gantry equipment to strike Luke's sword arm. Pain seizes the young warrior. His weapon falls. The hand that grasped it will never grasp anything again. Yeah, they cut off Luke's hand in narration captions. All you see is Luke's lightsaber hanging in the air. Why is this comic so bad at showing important moments or scenes up close and in the moment? Luke retreats farther down the catwalk over the big pit.
There is no escape, Luke. Don't make me slay you. Join me. Together we will be more powerful than the Emperor. It was meant to be.
Take my hand, Luke. Oh, right.
There are many things Obi-Wan kept from you, such as what happened to your father.
Ben told me enough! He told me you killed my father!
No, Luke.
I am your father. This is a weird remake of How I Met Your Mother. I really do wonder what sort of world, what sort of different story this would have been had we gotten the twist that was here as a placeholder to keep the real twist from getting leaked. That Obi-Wan killed his father. Would Vader have turned back to good? Would we learn that Luke's father was actually becoming as bad as Vader, and that's why Obi-Wan killed him? Some kind of misinterpretation of events so that Vader thought Obi-Wan killed him when he didn't? Who knows? What we do know is that Luke senses the truth.
Luke, you can destroy the Emperor. He has foreseen this. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't have any clones or anything on standby in case that happens. We can rule the galaxy together, father and son.
Yeah, starting a business with your family seems like a good idea sometimes, but I think that's just gonna do more harm than good to your relationship. With no other choice, Luke leaps down into the pit, in the comic screaming, "Never!" as he goes, which is just kind of goofy, honestly, and yet feels like the kind of thing George Lucas would have inserted into a new edition. Vader stares as the youth vanishes into the darkness.
That's it, you are grounded, young man!
As the narration points out, this isn't a bottomless pit, but an air tunnel and ventilation system. So Luke gets sucked into a vent and shoved out of the city to hang precariously from a weather vane. As our heroes reach the Millennium Falcon and take off, Vader orders his ship come in to retrieve both Luke and the Falcon. With the Force, Luke reaches out to Leia, who orders them to turn around and retrieve him. Oh, thank goodness, the Falcon turning around gets a splash page. Very important moment to be depicted and shown on an entire page here, rather than the "I am your father" reveal, or Luke's arm getting cut off. Lando catches Luke as he falls off the weather vane, though in the comic it apparently snaps from the weight rather than Luke falling unconscious. They reach orbit and try to leave, but the hyperdrive still isn't working, much to Lando's surprise, since he ordered his crews to fix it. It was then that Lando discovered that he was actually a terrible boss and everybody in Cloud City hated his guts. Luke, delirious, asks Obi-Wan why he didn't tell him about Vader being his father, but no time for that. R2 already found out the Empire disabled their hyperdrive when their capture was ordered, so goes off to reactivate it instead of finishing repairs on 3PO. The Millennium Falcon speeds off to safety at last while Vader just walks off.
Sometime later, in a safe sector of space, a patient recuperates from an operation that has given him a new hand. One that is mechanized, cybernetically controlled.
And one we will not show you because instead this panel features 3PO saying, "Hey, Lando's calling." Lando says that he and Chewie are off to try to rescue Han from Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. And so our comic and the movie ends with the rest of our heroes watching the Falcon fly away in hope that this trilogy can have a happy ending. Well, I can definitively say that the Empire did in fact strike back, fulfilling the one thing it needed to accomplish. Unfortunately, this comic kinda sucks. It's not entirely without merit. It is still The Empire Strikes Back, after all. But while you can forgive some adaptation choices of condensing stuff or leaving in lines that would eventually be cut into the finished movie, you really have to wonder why the artists, Al Williamson and Carlos Garzon, kept failing to include really visual, important moments of the movie and instead just pulling back and letting the narration do the heavy lifting. Sure, even as a movie adaptation, this was probably made using the Marvel method, where the writer would just include so much narration, almost distrustful of the artists to get the point across, but I have to imagine they knew how significant some of these shots are, but instead letting dialogue and narration captions tell us what's going on instead of showing us. I will grant it that it manages to condense the movie into 6 issues of less than average length, and it doesn't feel like it's too overstuffed, but for a movie that had great cinematography, the art failed to convey how good the movie looked. I started this review with the question, what makes The Empire Strikes Back the best Star Wars movie? And I think it's a lot of things. Competent heroes, competent villains, tense situations, the war of the title, the big moments being treated like big moments, and the terrible tragic events treated as the terrible tragic events they are. We see the triumphs of the villains and want our heroes to rise up that much more, but can't just yet. And I think that's one of the big factors of its success. The thing I keep speaking about when it comes to why I love superhero comics. It leaves us wanting more. It leaves us wanting the next chapter, to see our heroes finally get that victory they so rightly deserve. Having a dark story is one thing, but it's not about wallowing in misery. It's about getting back up and resolving the darkness in some way that leaves the audience satisfied. It does what it promised it would do. push our heroes to their breaking point as the Empire proves how strong they are even without a Death Star. And yet our heroes make it through. They haven't won through yet, but we know they will. And it gets us to think about the Force in new ways too, as a way of bringing these people together, just as all things are joined by it. The dark side came out on top today, but not tomorrow. Next time, back to Patreon-sponsored reviews as we check out another epic multi-part story with the first segment of Mega Man and Sonic Worlds Collide. And the number one additional missed opportunity of Atop the Fourth Wall is from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back comic adaptation. Yep, one more Star Wars for the road. It's all Star Wars this January, I guess. But no, I made frequent mentions during my review of the comic adaptation of The Empire Strikes Back that Yoda was drawn oddly. A lot of the time, his size kept changing. Sometimes he would be in the correct size in art, but it was kind of all over the place. Sometimes being small enough to be like a little fairy on Luke's shoulder kind of thing. And if I had looked into it more, namely looked at the ending pages of issue 41, I'd actually have an answer for this. And I really hate when I miss stuff like that. I love sharing behind the scenes with you guys about the process of making comics, and adaptations are especially fun. Archie Goodwin, writer and editor for the Star Wars ongoing series at Marvel, talked about the process of making the adaptation, of getting to spend a week at Lucasfilm going through 10,000 photos to grab references for the adaptation and given a copy of the script to adapt. He talked about the process of turning 160 pages into 96 for the comic, what had to be condensed, what shots to create to try to keep the idea of a scene going and dynamically interesting to look at, especially when they don't have a finished movie to base it on. And what's more, guesswork about how a character looks if they don't have any photos of them. See, one thing that Goodwin did not get was anything involving special effects because those were still being worked on. As such, he had to grab concept art for a lot of things. And that included a Ralph McQuarrie painting of Yoda, which is all they had at the time. You can see the original version of it. Blue, even more wrinkly, longer hair, and less bald. They did get the revised photos of Yoda to them eventually, but by that point, the paperback version of the comic had already gone to press, so while they did have time to go and alter the artwork for the Marvel Super Special and individual comics of the adaptation, there exists a printed version of the adaptation featuring the original Yoda. So Star Wars actually has a rich tradition going back to its very release of needing to re-edit and release its stuff. We'll call this comic the McClunky Cut. Another interesting tidbit. I had commented in the review that it was odd that we didn't actually see the Wampa or the giant space worm creature that the Millennium Falcon entered into, and apparently that was by George Lucas's request specifically, not wanting people to be spoiled about how they looked. Or maybe considering how the Wampa was originally left out of the movie because they thought it looked bad, he just feared the comic version would look better than what was on the screen. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Time to close out the adaptations of Star Wars movies with the final one, Return of the Jedi. A pity there aren't any more adaptations after this. So yeah, Return of the Jedi, arguably the weakest or worst of the three original trilogy movies. But let's be fair here, that's like saying something was the worst when you have scores of 10 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, and 9.4 out of 10. Sure, one has the lowest score, but it's still high enough that it's great. Part of it being the quote-unquote worst of the original trilogy comes down to the behind-the-scenes of it. The less than enthusiastic reaction to Empire Strikes Back, George Lucas having personal life problems that convinced him to stop his plans for more movies and consequently leading to some questionable creative choices, bringing in Richard Marquand to direct, and of course needing to wrap up a lot of story set up by the previous two films. It may not have been as good as Empire, but it certainly did its job of resolving everything satisfactorily and with plenty of fun, memorable moments. But of course, we're here to talk about comic adaptations, so let's get into it. Unlike the last two movies, Return of the Jedi was not released as part of the main Marvel Star Wars comic series, but rather as an issue of Marvel Super Special and its own 4-issue miniseries. However, the Super Special issue was accidentally released a month before the movie came out. This fact was discovered by Mark Hamill himself, an avid comic fan, who alerted Lucasfilm. The comic was recalled, but of course by that point copies had been sold and spoilers revealed. Probably would have been worse if the internet was what it is now.
Like the other movies, the comic got a re-release with updated coloring. Definitely the best of the 3 original adaptations, but like before, modern-day coloring techniques just look off when paired with older art it wasn't intended for. Still, nothing as bad as the effects shots from A New Hope's redo, at least. So let's dig into the adaptation of Star Wars: Return of the Jedi and see what made it into the adaptation, and what didn't make it into the movie. My scans are from the Marvel Super Special version, so we'll talk about that one's cover. And it's a little weird. Painted style? Perfectly fine. Looming Darth Vader helmet over Luke in black holding his lightsaber? Fine. Jungle Trooper, Chicken Walkers, some of our heroes? All that's fine. But there are just a few odd decisions here. Going back to Luke, I can forgive his appearance being slightly off model. But what's going on with the lightsaber? It looks more like a weak flashlight casting a little bit of glow in fog rather than its standard shape, not helped by the lightsaber itself looking wider than normal. But there's something off about the way Luke is holding it. It looks like the thing can be held with one hand and he's just putting his other hand there for effect. Oh, but then there is a very important thing they included on this cover: the Imperial Guards! Remember all the stuff they did in the movie? I did check the original Return of the Jedi poster to see if maybe this was them just copying elements from those, but nope. I don't know, maybe this is just how it works. These kind of artists just get a bunch of concept art and try to make a collage out of it instead of picking important stuff from the movie. Would also explain these 3 random A-Wings flying around. The official comics adaptation of the greatest space fantasy of all. Warhammer 40k fans scratch their heads at that declaration. We begin on an earlier version of the movie's opening crawl. Rebel commanders are planning their next move against the evil Galactic Empire. They are convinced that if they sit back and do nothing, the Emperor's low polling numbers will work against him. For the first time, all Rebel warships are being brought together to form a single giant armada. Unfortunately, they decided to do this during rush hour. Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia have made their way to Tatooine to rescue Han Solo from the clutches of the vile gangster Jabba the Hutt. They're pretty sure he's a pushover, what with him being this definitely humanoid yellow guy. Little do they know, the rebellion is doomed. But the trending topics on social media spoil it for them. The Emperor has ordered construction of a new armored space station more powerful than the first dreaded Death Star. The Emperor wishes to call it Death Star U, but there's some concern from marketing that it'll cause brand confusion. Darth Vader arrives at the new Death Star and is greeted by its supervisor, Commander Jerjerrod.
We can dispense with pleasantries, Commander Jerjerrod. You can send the fruit basket to my quarters.
Apparently the Death Star is having the same scheduling issues I am, and Vader is here to motivate the workers to get back on track, especially since he's coming to oversee its completion himself. Jerjerrod says they'll be ready.
I hope so, Jerjerrod. For your sake. The Emperor will tolerate no further delay in the final destruction of this outlaw rebellion. The shareholders have been breathing down our necks for weeks, man.
We cut over to Tatooine to the first chapter of the story. In the hands of Jabba the Hutt. I love the font choice for that title. Makes it look like a goofy, fun kid's book. Hey kids, in this story, a slug monster is going to lick a woman and then force them to wear a metal bikini. Can you spell bikini? R2 and 3PO are traveling to the lair of Jabba. Of course I'm worried. You should be too. Poor Lando Calrissian never returned from this place. Think of the employment benefits they must be offering if he got a job here instead, R2. They're led inside and brought to Jabba, saying they have a message for him, and R2 even says there's a gift. Gift? What gift? Shut up, Goldie! Jabba loves Amazon gift cards! It's all part of the plan!
A wretched hive of scum and villainy. The words of Obi-Wan Kenobi leap through 3PO's memory circuits. They were spoken in description of Mos Eisley Spaceport. They apply even more to the crowded, noisy chamber where the droids are led. The throne room of Jabba the Hutt.
You say that, but you don't know what they got up to in the bar they met Han Solo in. Let's just say that dude who got his arm cut off wasn't unhappy about it. Once they reach Jabba, R2 plays a holographic message from Luke. Luke says he seeks an audience with Jabba to bargain for Han Solo's life.
The notion brings rude howls and sniggering from most gathered in the chamber, except for one whose business it is never to underestimate any foe, the bounty hunter Boba Fett.
Wow, I can't wait to see what amazing things Boba Fett does in the story to prove how much of a badass he is. Luke says that he thinks they can come to a mutually beneficial agreement, and as a gesture of goodwill, he's giving Jabba R2 and 3PO. As an offering of goodwill, here are these decades-old second-hand droids. Jabba laughs this off, saying there will be no bargain, and Han Solo is exactly where he wants him to be, still encased in carbonite and hanging up on a wall.
I have no intention of giving up my favorite decoration.
We put Christmas lights around him when the holidays come up.
The comic seems to be flipping on whether he's speaking Huttese or English without even some marker to indicate it's being translated for us. I only bring this up because as we see in the next scene where the two droids are sent to be fitted with restraining bolts, it's pointed out that Jabba needs a new translator droid since he destroyed the last one out of anger. Speaking of his mood swings, we cut to a party Jabba is throwing where we get a changed premise from the movie. There, he tries to pull the Twi'lek slave girl over to him, but she resists and he gets pissed. Here, however, the narration says that she's trying to attract his favor and he just rejects her.
One word from the hut, and suddenly, the floor beneath the dancer is gone.
I'm sorry, Lisa, I'm not really sure what most of these buttons do. Lisa?
The trapdoor closes and they watch through the floor, them being attacked by something below. Before 3PO can process all that, he spots a bounty hunter arriving with Chewbacca as a prisoner.
In the hands of a bounty hunter who, in a strange tongue, electronically processed demands reward for this prize.
Very well. Present them with the 10% off coupon for the gift shop.
A few little things are changed with the dialogue to condense it a bit, as well as not having Jabba shove 3PO over in anger. Plus, despite the narration saying that the bounty hunter is speaking in a strange tongue, the word balloons are just in English. The bounty hunter threatens to kill him with a thermal detonator if they don't get what they feel they're owed. Jabba laughs at this.
This bounty hunter is my kind of scum.
So if Han had just threatened Jabba with an explosive, he would have been fine? The bounty hunter agrees to a mid-range amount and is invited to hang out while they continue partying, Chewbacca taken away to a cell. However, we do see Lando among the guards hidden behind a mask. That night, the bounty hunter sneaks into the throne room and uses the controls to free Han from the carbonite block. He can't see due to the hibernation sickness, but the bounty hunter promises his sight will return. When he asks who they are, they take off the helmet. I'm someone who loves you, hotshot.
Chewbacca, I knew you'd come for me!
Suddenly, a curtain parts, accompanied by mocking laughter.
My, what a touching sight. It's a good thing we all decided to hide behind this curtain and stay absolutely quiet. But seriously, why the hell did we do this? Were we getting ready for a surprise birthday party?
Han is led away to a cell while Leia is taken closer to Jabba so he can lick her because he's gross. I'm also not fond of Leia's expression drawn here, just reminds me of something else. Han is reunited with Chewie, who brings him up to speed on how Luke is a Jedi Knight now.
And even Lando's here, going along with the kid's rescue plan? I'm out of things a little while and everyone gets delusions.
He's kinda right. Because this rescue plan sucks. Okay, here's what we'll do, guys. We'll send in R2 and 3PO with an offer to pay for Han's release, with R2 and 3PO as gifts, assuming he doesn't just accept the offer and therefore make it so we now have to rescue the two droids, because unlike a lot of the universe, we do actually seem to care about them. Said droids will no doubt be fitted with restraining bolts that might inhibit their ability to help with the plan later. Lando is already there, providing intelligence, admittedly, and therefore another figure who can help us during the rescue, but if he's discovered, he will be yet another person in need of rescue. But that's okay, because the next part of the plan is to send in Leia disguised as a bounty hunter with Chewbacca, who will be an additional prisoner that needs to be rescued. During the night, Leia will free Han from the carbonite and hopefully sneak him out, leaving several people inside who still need rescue. However, if she is caught, we will have yet one more person in need of rescue, and we can only hope that he doesn't act incredibly lecherous towards Leia. But assuming all of that, it is only at that point that I, Jedi Knight, will attempt to enter and directly speak with him. I will not be armed, and I will either somehow figure out a way to break out Han, Leia, R2, and 3PO with Lando, or I will get captured myself, and with any luck, I'll be given an elaborate over-the-top death and be given a weapon at a convenient moment that will ensure our big escape attempt goes off without a hitch.
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
Far be it from me to challenge the wisdom of a Jedi Knight here, but maybe some kind of commando raid with a bunch of rebel troops in the middle of the night, or during a time when Jabba is away from the palace, Lando providing you with intelligence about when that would be. Hell, you can even use the Jedi mind trick on any remaining guards in the palace to just hand him over to you. Like, even this assumes that Jabba will use 3PO and R2 and not just have the guards shoot them for funsies. Yeah, Jabba might need a new interpreter, but maybe Jabba already ordered one from Space Amazon or something. Whatever, let's see this plan come together as Luke arrives and indeed uses the mind trick on Bib Fortuna to be brought to the throne room. Where in the movie, apparently it's nap time at the palace. Not so in the comic, but go figure. And yeah, Leia is now in a gold bikini and held by a chain to Jabba. I don't know, I know we're trying to rebrand the slave girl outfit as the Hutt Slayer outfit, but it still feels weird to try to give it a positive spin when, you know, she was forced to wear it and all. Jabba says mind tricks won't work on him.
I am not affected by your human thought pattern. My thought patterns are plaid.
Luke gives him one last chance to bargain. It's your choice. I warn you not to underestimate my powers. I should warn you, Jabba. A little gremlin taught me how to lift rocks with my brain. Luke uses his powers that should not be underestimated to pull a gun over to himself, but is then dropped down into the pit below. Great plan so far, Luke. Now when the big monster eats you, we'll have Laios' party infiltrate this place next to try to recover your remains and resurrect you. They'll probably eat Jabba, I'm thinking. And thus Luke is confronted by the Rancor, which he just barely manages to get away from and over to an opened gate. However, the way out is barred, so his only chance is a control panel for the gate, smashing it with a rock as the Rancor passes under it. The gate falls and kills the beast, much to the annoyance of Jabba and his gang. Luke's brought back out to him, along with Han and Chewbacca, where 3PO interprets his speech. For your extreme offense, the great Jabba demands all three of you pay with the most torturous form of death. Endlessly watching businessmen giving speeches that make pop culture references, but getting the references wrong, and you are unable to call out to correct them. No, they're going to be thrown into the Sarlacc pit. In its belly, you will find a new definition of suffering as you slowly digest for 1,000 years.
Joke's on you, Jabba! I'm secretly in Devore!
The group are brought to the Dune Sea where the Sarlacc resides on a floating sail barge and a skiff where the prisoners are held. On board the barge, Jabba pulls Leia over to him.
After the amusement outside ends, you'll soon begin to appreciate me.
I mean, I already do because you're a practical effect instead of CGI like every other Hutt afterwards. While R2 acts as a drink server, Han tells Luke that if this was his plan, he's not big on it. Jabba's palace was too well guarded. I had to get you out of there. Luke, you walked into this place with nobody stopping you in the comic. Like, even in the movie, the guards that tried to stop you got force choked or put to sleep or something. You're just trying to cover your ass in how terrible this plan is. Also, since this comic came before the special edition, the Sarlacc doesn't have the big beak thing that was put there for whatever reason. Neat. Thus we begin Chapter 2, The Emperor Commands. Just FYI, we are 19 pages in out of 66. The Jabba sequence in the movie is roughly a quarter of the film. The comic, it takes up almost half at 28 pages. For a sequence that doesn't actually contribute to the movie's overall plot, just resolution on Han from the previous film, and establishing Luke as a Jedi Knight with his own new lightsaber. In any case, the group are ready to be tossed into the Sarlacc, with Luke forced to walk a plank, but R2 is abandoned a serving tray, the tips were terrible anyway, and launches out Luke's lightsaber, which he catches. And we do not see it turn on in the comic. I mean, we see him use it, but only him catching it. Thus, the big reveal of it being green and the excitement of it all is kind of diminished. Lando reveals himself and punches off one of the guards.
Reaction aboard the sand barge is swift and outraged.
And he was mad and angry.
At Jabba's roaring command, there is a stampede for the upper deck. In the lead, Boba Fett!
Oh man, here we go! Time for Boba Fett to show off how cool he is! While he jetpacks off the barge, regardless of how you feel about the outfit and the attempted fandom name change, it gets the name here as Leia manages to grab the chain holding her, whip it around Jabba's neck, and strangles him to death with it. Boba Fett arrives to finally be a certified badass, beloved by Star Wars fans forever, only for the sail barge to shoot their guns at the skiff, stunning him and knocking Lando over, hanging by a rope.
Luke flips over to attack those on the barge while Han, still a little blind, hears Chewbacca roar and then turns around, slamming a stick into Boba Fett and setting off his rocket pack. He flies off out of control, right into the Sarlacc.
I see why they call you the best bounty hunter in the galaxy.
R2 frees Leia from her chain while a lucky shot blasts Luke in the robotic hand. It's fine, but it does expose the cyborg components. R2 retrieves 3PO from an attack by Jabba's weird, laughing pet thing, Salacious Crumb, which shows you the power of marketing, toys, and pop culture osmosis because, just like the Porgs, this thing's name is never said on screen, but people know it. Han manages to keep Lando from being Sarlacc food while Leia emerges on the deck of the barge with the droids, taking down the gunner. The droids are pushed into the sand, and Luke orders Leia to aim the gun at the deck of the barge, allowing them to blast the ship and anyone left on board. Luke and Leia swing over to the remaining skiff and away from the barge. In a difference from movie to comic, the barge is completely blown up there, while here it's just left on fire for our heroes to watch burn. However, despite all that, our heroes have to part ways with each other, Luke heading off alone in his X-Wing and promising to rejoin the Rebel fleet soon. Turns out the sail barge was a rental, and he feels the need to explain this to the office. We cut over to the Death Star, where the Emperor makes his first proper appearance as played by Ian McDiarmid.
Rise, Lord Vader. I would speak with you. So, I heard you offer your son to overthrow me with him at your side. What's that all about, Helmet Head?
The Emperor says that he can sense that Vader wants to continue to look for Luke, but encourages him that soon enough, Luke will come directly to him. When that happens, he wants Luke brought to him so they can try to turn him to the dark side.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen. Now, have you set up that cult and all the cloning facilities on Exegol? I have foreseen a lot of things, and I need to start getting the wheels turning.
The order of scenes is changed up a little, with instead of the cutaway now, we have the Emperor delivered to his chambers and ordering Vader to send the Imperial fleet to the far side of Endor. We cut to Dagobah, where Luke has finally returned to Yoda to complete his training, which makes me wonder what the hell he was doing in between this movie and the last, where he suddenly is walking around with so much confidence to say he's a Jedi Knight. Did he go back to Yoda once his robot hand was installed, then leave again when they found Han? Because the dialogue implies they haven't seen each other since he abandoned the training to save the others in Empire Strikes Back. But unfortunately, Yoda's not doing great.
The face you make! Look I so bad to your young eyes?
No, of course not. You don't look like a moldy avocado at all.
I do, yes I do. Sick I've become. Old and weak, yes. When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not. Although all your hair still have, I suspect.
Luke says he still needs Yoda's help to finish his training, but Yoda says that this is just the way of things. What's more, that Luke doesn't require anything more. However, there's one thing left to do if he's actually to be a Jedi: confronting Vader. Luke asks the million-dollar question from the end of the last movie. Is Darth Vader really his father?
Told you, did he? Your father he is. Unexpected this is. And unfortunate. Hoping to save that twist to the end of this movie we were.
Yoda explains that he hadn't been properly trained when he heard the news, that the burden of this information is going to make things more complicated than if he had learned after he had gone through the Jedi training to distance himself from the emotions. However, one thing not in the movie that Yoda says is that Obi-Wan would have told him a long time ago if not for Yoda ordering him not to. Luke apologizes for rushing off like he did, but Yoda says sorry won't help them now. He warns him to beware the Emperor and not to underestimate him, or he may suffer the same fate as his father.
Remember, when gone I am, last of the Jedi will you be.
What about Cal Kestis?
Video games count do not, or else we'd acknowledge Kyle Katarn.
Or Ezra Bridger?
Hanging out with Thrawn or something, I don't know.
Ahsoka? She actually knew my father.
You're not a Jedi anymore.
Okay, you're being really pedantic about this stuff. See, this is why I hate all the expanded universe lore talking about all the other Jedi who escaped Order 66. Because they have to come up with excuses and hand waves to try to say why, oh, only Anakin's son could do this, when originally it was just there's nobody else left. I just feel like it diminishes Luke's role here in the story, especially with what Yoda and Obi-Wan wanted of him. But we'll get to that in a minute. We don't see Yoda disappear and become one with the Force like we do in the movie. Instead, the narration just saying that he's taking a rest, which could just mean he's taking a nap in this comic. Luke tells R2 that he can't do this alone, and Obi-Wan appears.
Yoda and I will be with you always. I mean, we're ghosts, so we can't actually do anything, but I've made quite a lovely pro-Luke sign that I'll be waving around during your fight with Vader.
Ignoring the "Obi-Wan was going to tell you, but I told him not to" line, Obi-Wan explains that he was going to tell Luke about his father when he finished his training. "You told me Darth Vader betrayed and murdered my father.
And you told me that one time you'd help me clean out my garage back on Tatooine that weekend and bailed to go to Tashi Station instead. So I guess we're both liars now."
Obi-Wan explains that was indeed the case. He became Darth Vader and betrayed everything Anakin believed in, destroying the good man he was forever.
"What I told you was true. From a certain point of view. Yes, the liar's point of view. Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our point of view. For instance, from some people's point of view, the Jedi are evil. Wait, no, bad example. If I was wrong, it certainly wasn't the first time. You see, what happened to your father was my fault. From a certain point of view. I shouldn't have insisted he go down to a planet full of sand. It drove a wedge between us that never healed.
There's a line that was changed in the final movie where he says that he met Anakin during the Clone Wars and not before it as a child.
"When I first met your father during the Clone Wars, he was already a great pilot. I mean, admittedly, it was a pilot for space NASCAR, but still. With foolish pride, I took it upon myself to train Anakin in the ways of the Jedi. Also, it was Qui-Gon's dying wish, and because we tend to become ghosts when we die, I couldn't exactly lie to him and not actually do it. My mistake was thinking I could be as good a teacher as Yoda. I was not. And so when the Emperor sensed Anakin's power, he was able to lure him to the dark side. Admittedly, from my point of view, I left to go kill General Grievous, then next thing I know, your dad's murdering children. That was a weird day."
Luke says that Vader still has good in him.
"Once I too thought Vader could be saved, that he could be turned back to the good side. But he could not. Now he is more machine than man. Evil and twisted." Yeah, just FYI, Luke, machines are inherently evil and twisted. That's why we're such assholes to droids.
"I can't kill my own father."
"Then the Emperor has already defeated you."
Okay, and this is a point that a lot of people didn't quite get in the comments for the Empire Strikes Back review. Yoda and Obi-Wan had no intention of Luke redeeming Vader. Several commenters stated that Luke was their last hope and not the hundreds of other Jedi who escaped Order 66 and whatnot, because only his son could turn him from the dark side. But no, that was never their plan. Remember,
he's more machine now than man. The good man who was your father was destroyed.
As far as they're concerned, Anakin is gone. Completely and utterly. They thought Luke was the only one who could destroy Vader and the Emperor, which ironically was kind of the problem with the Jedi before the fall, and why, theoretically, Luke could have created a better Jedi Order. Their very rigid way of thinking. Now, you're absolutely right. Luke being the only one to still believe in his father is the reason why he's the one who can win in the end, but that's not their reason. Their reasoning is because there's nobody else left, and the son of Anakin would be powerful enough to defeat the Emperor. You are confusing what actually won through in the end as if they intended it that way. It's this weird dichotomy when it comes to this franchise. People will point out, oh, the Jedi sucked and were awful in the prequels. That's why we needed Luke's better Jedi Order. But then pretend like, oh, Obi-Wan and Yoda, who are still operating under the old way of thinking, totally know that Luke can redeem Vader, even though the old way of operating is to just strike down the Sith. Something they keep telling Luke to do. It's okay, guys. I'm sure it's explained in some comic or short story that this was Obi-Wan and Yoda playing five-dimensional chess here, and not that sometimes the characters we like are wrong. However, Obi-Wan admits that there is another, that Luke has a twin sister separated from him at birth who could also do it. However, unlike the movie where Luke realizes it himself, Obi-Wan just admits it, that Leia is his sister. Oh my god, I made out with her so many times.
Yes, Luke, and let's not even get into you thinking of her while using your lightsaber, so to speak. You realize that Force ghosts are watching all the time, right?
Another altered bit of dialogue here as Luke says that he has to be the one to kill Vader then, though Obi-Wan says he needs to bury his feelings or the Emperor will use them against him. We cut to the rebels in the Sullust system to begin Chapter 3.
Mission to Endor.
The Rebel Alliance is at their strongest we'll ever see, with a sizable force all gathered together for the aforementioned mission. Lando has been made a general and is leading the attack on the new Death Star. It's here where we're formally introduced to Mon Mothma, who gives the briefing on the plan, along with Admiral Akbar. As far as they know, the Imperial fleet is being distracted by Rebel forces throughout the galaxy, keeping the new Death Star relatively unprotected. The Emperor himself is there to oversee its completion, and there's an energy shield being projected from the forest moon Endor to protect the thing. A commando team using a stolen Imperial shuttle will be sent to destroy the shield generator, then fighters can fly into the Death Star's superstructure to destroy its main reactor and blow it to hell. Han, it turns out, is going to lead the strike team, but he admits he doesn't have a command crew yet because he didn't want to volunteer his friends for it. Chewbacca, of course, roars his agreement. Make it 2. I'm not letting you out of my sight again, your generalship. And Luke arrives. And I'm with you too. And my axe! Since Han's team is taking the Imperial shuttle to Endor, he says that Lando should take the Falcon for the attack on the Death Star.
I don't know, Leia. Looking at the Millennium Falcon back there, I got a funny feeling, like I'm not gonna see her again. Like in some drafts of the script, I was going to die or something, which would be really crappy considering the first act of this movie is all about rescuing me and all.
The shuttle approaches Endor and they transmit some stolen authorization codes. Darth Vader is on that command ship.
Come on, Luke, you're just jittery. Let's keep our distance, Chewie, without looking like we're keeping our distance.
You know, fly casually. On board the Super Star Destroyer, though,
I have a strange feeling about that ship. Nah, can't be. They're flying too casually.
They're using an old code, Lord Vader, but it checks out. The Konami code still holds some weight here, sir. Vader says to let them through and he'll handle it. The strike team lands on Endor and soon comes across some Imperial scouts. It'd take too long to get around them and they can't let them warn their forces if the team is spotted, so Han and Chewie go in to attack. However, while in the movie Han sneaks up and is accidentally given away by a snapping twig, here he and Chewie just rush forward and attack, alerting 2 other farther away of their presence. Luke and Leia hop onto speeder bikes to pursue them as they race away on their own bikes. After several laser blasts, one of the bikes is blown up, before Luke's own speeder gets blasted. He deflects the laser blasts of the other bike and then uses his lightsaber to blow his attacker up. You know, pretty soon this place is going to be called the Forest Fire Moon of Endor. Leia got separated from him during the fight. On the Death Star, Vader reports to the Emperor that he can sense his son is among the rebel force that they both know landed on the planet. Strange that I have not. I wonder if your feelings on the matter are clear, Lord Vader.
What the hell's that supposed to mean? That I can't sense my own... Wait! I sense my son. Back at the food court. To Arby's!
The Emperor says that Vader needs to go to the moon, that Luke will voluntarily surrender himself to him. I have foreseen it. So you've foreseen it, but you can't see him on Endor yourself? We skip Leia meeting Wicket the Ewok, instead just seeing the rest of our heroes witness the aftermath of that. Chewie, meanwhile, spots some meat hung up next to a tree and decides to grab it, but it turns out to be a net trap. R2 is able to cut them all free, but they fall right in the middle of a bunch of creatures. The aforementioned Ewoks, a bunch of little teddy bears brandishing spears at them. However, they spot 3PO and the Ewoks are shocked. The droid can understand what they're saying. I could be mistaken, sir. They use quite a primitive dialect, but they appear to think I'm some manner of deity. Specifically, they seem to think I'm Capo, the Hawaiian goddess with a detachable flying vagina. Unfortunately, 3PO's programming forbids him from pretending to be a god, so he doesn't order them to let the group go. Instead, they just carry 3PO off and the rest are brought back to their village so they can be eaten. 3PO tries to get them to let our heroes go, but it seems to do so would be offensive to their medicine man. Leia also is revealed. One of these little folks, the Ewoks, found me after my run-in with the Imperials. I know they're called Ewoks despite them not speaking English because shut up. Luke tells 3PO to say that if they're not released, he'll use his magic against them. 3PO does so, and Luke uses the Force to fly him around. Frightened by this demonstration, the Ewoks cut our heroes free. I'm guessing if this hadn't worked, you could have just used the Force to snuff out any fire and snap their spears and undo their ropes or whatever, but it was better to gain their friendship. 3PO explains the whole Rebels versus Empire thing to the Ewoks as best as he can, and they seem to get the gist of it. We are now part of the tribe, Captain. Remove your pants and begin growing fur. As the meeting and plans are made, Luke walks off, followed by Leia, and we get a very nice scene between the two. Sadly, a moment that doesn't really get any follow-up later, like if Luke had brought it up with Vader. Leia, do you remember your mother? Your real mother? Real mother? What do you mean? Oh my god, I'm adopted?! Also, weirdly a typo here where there's no space between the question mark and the next word. She died when I was very young. I only recall a little. Feelings, really. I really get the feeling that my mom was Keira Knightley? She was very beautiful, gentle and kind, but sad. I knew her for literally only seconds, but I sussed her deal out pretty quickly. Luke admits he has no memory of his mother. He also confesses that Vader is his father and that his presence on the mission is attracting Vader's attention. He needs to leave or else he puts the rest of them in danger. What's more, he admits to her that she's his sister and that if he falls, she'll need to take up the power of the Jedi herself. She recommends he just run as far as he can away, but he says he needs to confront him, that there's still good in him. He won't turn me over to the Emperor.
2 hours later.
Welcome, young Skywalker.
Anyway, Luke surrenders to Vader at a nearby Imperial outpost. Vader orders his troops to begin searching for the rest of the rebels while he talks with his son. Luke reiterates his belief that Vader is still a good person deep down.
You have constructed a saber to replace the one lost when we last met. And I see it's one of those color-changing ones. Neat.
Indeed, you are powerful, as the Emperor has foreseen.
Actually, come to think of it, that saber you lost wasn't mine, was it? I've been looking for that thing everywhere.
Vader says it's too late for him to turn from the dark side. It's too powerful. Thus begins Chapter 4, The Final Duel. The Rebel fleet, now completely gathered, makes the jump to lightspeed to begin their assault on the Death Star. Back on Endor, the next sequence is condensed down and explained via narration and exposition dialogue because, well, there are only 14 pages left to cover another 40 or so minutes of the movie. The Rebel strike team locates a back entrance to the shield facility, and Wicket the Ewok distracts the guards by stealing a speeder. They then get inside, capture the troops, and begin planting explosives. Back on the Death Star, which is actually upside down in this shot. Didn't realize we had seen it like this somewhere else before Rogue One. Luke is brought by Vader to the Emperor.
Welcome, young Skywalker. I have been expecting you. I look forward to completing your training. Yoda taught you to lift rocks. I will teach you to lift rocks evilly.
Luke says he won't be converted to the dark side like his father was.
You will find, my young Jedi. It is you who are mistaken. How's your pregnant wife doing, eh?
I don't have one.
Oh. Okay, this will be a bit harder than your dad then. Ah, your lightsaber. A Jedi's weapon. Much like your father's.
I had to pawn off mine to afford the second Death Star. Luke is confident that soon they'll all be dead, but the Emperor reveals that this was all a trap. He let the information about the Death Star leak to draw the rebels in and destroy them once and for all. He wants Luke to be full of hate over all this, which is always just such a weird thing. Like, yeah, hate and anger lead to the dark side, but just because he's on the dark side doesn't mean he's gonna serve you, dude. Especially when you are the one he's pissed at. Hell, the entire reason the Rule of Two thing exists is because there were so many dark side users running around backstabbing each other that they couldn't get anything done. The Rebel fleet arrives, but quickly realizes something is up because their scanners are being jammed, which they would only know to do if the Empire knew they were coming. The Imperial fleet emerges and cuts the rebels off from escaping.
A trap! Quick, turn me saying that into a meme for some reason!
Some more condensing happens, cutting the sequence where Luke first sees the battle over Endor and the Emperor tells him to witness the firepower of the fully armed and operational battle station. We still see the effect though, as the Death Star begins targeting the bigger rebel ships and blasting them. The rebels want to try to retreat, but Lando insists they try to stay to give Han's team a chance to finish the job. Speaking of, more condensing on the planet as the rebel forces minus the droids are captured.
There is no escape. Should a miracle occur and the generator still be destroyed, I've given orders for this station to be turned on the Endor moon and destroy it. And what can they do at that point, Cut the scene from the movie?
With no other options before him, Luke pulls his lightsaber to him and tries to attack the Emperor, but Vader steps in and blocks it. On Endor, 3PO and R2 lure away some of the troops, only for the Ewoks to come down and start attacking.
Downing Imperials, stealing weapons.
The Empire's worst nightmare. A teddy bear with a gun! The distraction allows the rebel troops to attack and hopefully finish the job. While Lando uses the Falcon's maneuverability to their advantage in space, Luke and Vader begin their rematch. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but a learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of goodness, Luke. Wait.
But yeah, Luke does a lot better this time and manages to kick Vader down some stairs, spurned on by the Emperor.
Use your aggressive feelings, boy. Attack! Attack! Let the hate flow through you.
Okay, Emperor, I feel like I'm not getting the support and encouragement I should be when you're my manager.
Luke realizes that he's doing exactly that and tries to stop, hoping to get Vader to cease as well. And that goes about as well as you would expect. However, we once again have to condense things because there are only 6 pages left. So we cut ahead to when Luke was hiding in the dark, except now when he's standing on the stairs.
Your thoughts betray you. Your feelings for them are strong, especially for Leia. Yes, I sense it, feel it. A sister. A twin.
Oh crap, I tortured my own daughter with one of those floating ball droids. This is gonna be an awkward Thanksgiving.
Obi-Wan was wise to hide her.
I bet you could get an entire Disney Plus season out of that concept.
If you will not turn to the dark side, perhaps she will.
I mean, all I did was destroy Alderaan, torture her friends and loved ones, and dash all her hopes of freedom. Offer her a good salary and I'm sure she'll sign up.
Luke's anger overtakes him again and he attacks in a frenzy. Down on Endor, things are turning bad for the rebels as the Imperial chicken walkers start managing to rout the Ewoks. Our heroes are trying to access the bunker by hot-wiring it when Leia is hit in the arm. Unfortunately, the comic is different from how this plays out in the movie, with two stormtroopers trying to get them. Leia showing she has a secret gun, much like Han against Greedo really, and they have the callback to, I love you, I know, but instead she just shoots the troopers before then. Still, the reorganization of the sequences causes an interesting change. See, one of the walkers aims its guns at the two before we cut back to the Death Star and the fight around it. Luke's relentless strikes against Vader finally take their toll on him, and unlike how it happened in the Empire Strikes Back comic, we actually see Vader's hand get chopped off. The Emperor says it's time for him to kill Vader and then join him as his new apprentice. Unfortunately, we don't get the visual storytelling of Luke looking at the cut-off hand and then at his own robotic hand to show him realizing what he's becoming. He also doesn't toss away his lightsaber, just holding it at Vader. I am a Jedi, as my father was before me.
Well then, I am no longer your pal friend Patine, but your enemy foe Patine.
The dialogue is rearranged with his young fool, only now at the end do you understand line going first before, so be it, Jedi. But the point is that the Emperor lets loose with the Force lightning, zapping Luke back.
Ah, god damn it, Yoda, why didn't you teach me how to catch Force lightning like you did that one time?
Vader crawls back to the Emperor, but instead of waiting for a few more shocks from the Emperor on Luke, he instead immediately stands back up, grabs the Emperor, and flings him over the edge, his Force lightning continually shooting out and zapping the both of them.
Hurled by the giant, the Emperor spins helplessly downward into the void, bouncing, careening off the shaft's iron walls, to explode in the dark oblivion somewhere below, sending demonic winds howling up out of the pit.
Wow, what an ending for a villain! And pretty definitive, too. It'd be really stupid if he somehow survived it. It'd be really stupid if somehow he survived! Anyway, change narrative here. The forces inside the bunker are contacted by the Walker and said they need some more troops outside to secure the area, but this turns out to be a trick, with the Ewoks and Rebels catching them unawares, and we see that the Walker that had menaced Han and Leia was, in fact, commandeered by Chewbacca and the teddy bears. With that, they blow the shield generator up and the Death Star's defensive shields go down. The Rebel fleet were able to get through the jamming and detect the shield has gone down, so the Millennium Falcon leads a squadron of fighters into the superstructure. They soon find the main reactor and blast it, starting a chain reaction. It's not an instantaneous explosion though, so we have time to check back in with Luke and Vader. A few lines have been moved around as Vader collapses outside of a shuttle.
Go, my son. Leave me.
No, you're coming with me, Father. I've got to save you. I can't claim the life insurance money if there's no proof that you're dead.
You already have, Luke. Now, help me take this mask off. Just once. Let me face you without it.
I mean, the Emperor was subsidizing repairs to this thing, so it technically belongs to him, so I better leave it if I don't want to get sued.
The comic doesn't show his true face, probably a combination of condensing the material and just artistically wanting to preserve the mystery a bit, simply saying it's livid with scars, and he tells Luke to leave him as he dies. Luke does indeed head out with the abandoned shuttle as the Death Star goes boom. Not as impressive as the original A New Hope's Death Star explosion, but still pretty damn cool. The comic doesn't show Luke burning the body, and Luke inexplicably deciding to put the mask back on Vader for it. Why did he even bring that along? And so our comic ends with our heroes yub-nubbing it up in the Ewok village, the rebels joining in on the festivities along with Luke. Also, no shot of the Force ghosts of Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin either. Weird. And if later, while the revelry around the campfire swells, one among them stands apart, haunted perhaps, by knowledge few others can ever share, he is still not alone. There is something waiting to take his arm, to draw him to her and the others,
back into the circle of warmth and love. For only being 66 pages, less than any other Star Wars movie adaptation we've covered, this comic is actually pretty decent. I feel like they should have had another issue's worth, since right now it's the equivalent of 3 issues, but the adaptation cuts mostly make sense. The condensing in most parts does work, and while they probably shouldn't have had quite as much time with the Jabba plot versus the resolution of the trilogy, it does work. Kudos to the creators on this. When they split this into its own miniseries, though, they did make it 4 issues based on the chapters, but they were shorter than normal, padded out with additional pinups and other artwork to reach the required length. I would have just made the comic 80 pages myself. And yet, when they did the re-release with revised coloring, they didn't add in scenes of planets across the galaxy celebrating like the special edition did? Where's my shot of Jar Jar yelling, "Weesa free!" By the way, I decided out of curiosity to skim through the Star Wars comics after Return of the Jedi, and for reasons I do not understand, the New Republic just starts being operated out of Endor and the Ewok village. Go figure. Anyway, in terms of stuff to critique about the comic, the inking and coloring feel a bit muddy, a bit more like blobs of black rather than cleaner lines like I would prefer. It's not a deal breaker, obviously, it's just not my own cup of tea. And while the condensing of the story in parts does work, I would say the pacing in the final act does suffer a bit by not having the quieter moments, like Vader stalking Luke in the darkness before his berserk button gets pushed concerning Leia. We're also missing out on a few of the human moments between Leia and Han that got cut for the adaptation, but maybe they figured it was okay to cut those, since it's like, hey, they're a couple. Nothing really to do beyond that for their relationship at this point, I guess. The overall spectacle, I think, is a little lost by condensing it down. You know, big visuals kind of thing. But the panel layout still manages to convey some of that grandeur regardless, so we don't lose quite as many big wham moments like the Empire Strikes Back adaptation did. Honestly, just really kind of impressed by this one. Not perfect, but managing to squeeze a lot into something almost half the length of other adaptations. Next time, we've got a whole lot of Patreon-sponsored reviews to do since I sold off some additional slots last year and we have to start playing catch-up. Admittedly, there's going to be a bit of a delay because I'm going on vacation for a week and a half, but we'll get there. And hey, there are no more Star Wars movie comic adaptations to worry about this year. Huh, wonder what that's about. Anyway, next time, Volume 3 of Invincible.
No sign of him, even with these electro-binoculars. That's funny. Electro-binoculars was also the last name of one of Luke's friends.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Hello, my friends. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon, buy merch from the store envy link in the description, or check out the t-shirts available from Fourth Wall. Thanks for watching.